Hey, Miss Luke, apologize if I'm interrupting. I can't hear you on this end via Zoom. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. It's Colonel Surrey. Okay. Okay, I'll try to reconnect. Hey, Miss Sanderson, this is Colonel Surrey. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. It's something's not right here. I just lost the board meeting. Did you lose it too?
No, I can see everybody. You might try logging out and logging back in.
Can you hear him?
Um, Actually, no. Come to think of it,
Yeah, neither can Colonel Williamson.
yeah, we had that same problem last night with me, so they might be having a there's some kind of delay. And when they do come on, just mute your computer too. That helps. I don't know. They still haven't knocked that out yet, but it's good to hear your voice and hear from you guys, and hope the mission is going well as you navigate through these crazy times we're living in.
Yes, ma'am. I think if you can see them, I'm pretty sure they can hear us talking because they gave me a thumbs up, but for some reason we can't hear them.
Yeah, I can't hear them either. So, all right, we'll just hold tight and see what they can get together.
Sounds like we can hear you now.
Yeah.
You can hear the boardroom now? We can.
Yes, I can also.
All right, Ms. Tuttle, can we do the roll?
Mr. Rhodes.
Here.
Thank you. Colonel Williamson by Zoom. Colonel Williamson. Colonel Surrey.
Here.
Thank you. Colonel Williamson, can you hear us? He is online. Mr. Sampson.
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Doran.
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson by Zoom.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Marati.
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Luke.
Here.
Thank you. The board has a quorum.
Thank you. The adoption of the agenda. Core value, center everything we do on the student and student learning. Consent agenda items marked with an asterisk are considered routine items not requiring public discussion by the school board. Unless removed from the consent agenda, asterisk items will be automatically approved when the agenda is adopted. Questions concerning these items should be directed to the administration before the meeting. If the superintendent or a member of the public wishes to have an item removed from the consent agenda, the request must be made to a board member anytime prior to the start of the meeting. The board member has the discretion to accept or deny the request. Only a board member may remove an item from the consent agenda. If an item is removed from the consent agenda, it shall be considered separately as the last item of new business. Asterisk items will then be adopted by one single motion. May I have a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda with consent items.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Moline, can we please have you read the consent agenda?
Yes. The board has accepted.
The vote.
Oh, I apologize. The vote. Mrs. Tuttle, can we please have the vote?
Colonel Williamson. He's showing as on and he unmuted for a moment, but we're not hearing him. Colonel Surrey.
Yes, and he should be trying to call in via the phone. I just talked to him to see if he can come in that route.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sampson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Doran.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Marati.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mrs. Luke.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you. Mrs. Moline, can we please have you read the consent agenda items at this time?
Yes. The board has accepted the award in the amount of $1,199,000 for the Coronavirus Relief Fund for the states, tribal governments, and certain eligible local governments from the United States Department of Treasury through Doyon Limited per fiscal note 2022-43. And we would like to recognize that these funds are coming from an Alaska Native corporation and are based on the Alaska Native population of the school district. The board has approved Wood River Elementary School's request to fundraise approximately $2,500 through the Scholastic Book Fair from February 21st through the 25th, 2022, with proceeds to be used to assist with community outreach and the purchase of library books. And Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School's request to send 2 junior ROTC candidates with the North Pole High School Junior ROTC team to Camp Perry, Ohio, February 9th through 14th, 2022, to participate in the Junior ROTC Air Rifle Service Championships with the district covering substitute costs. And if any local, state, or federal travel or health warnings are issued, students will not travel. The board has accepted the following donations: $1,308.87 from the Crawford Elementary PTO to Crawford Elementary School for the purchase of a monitor, mount, and Intel NUC 11 Pro for the school's security system. $2,000 from the EOSC Welfare Fund to Crawford Elementary School to support the school's band and orchestra program. $1,000 from the Peter Marsh Foundation to Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School to support the school's band program. $3,000 from EOSC Welfare Fund to Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School to support the school's band program. $1,250 from Mount McKinley Bank to Lathrop High School to support the school's boys basketball program. $2,000 from Fairbanks Youth Sports to Lathrop High School to support the school's boys basketball program. $10,000 from the Anna Tremerolo to the Lathrop High School to support the school's boys and girls basketball program and general schools activities. $1,000 from the North Pole High School Girls Basketball Organization to North Pole High School to support the school's girls basketball team. $1,000 from the North Pole High School Pro Start class to the North Pole High School to support the school's Pro Start program. $1,800.10 from the EOSC Welfare Fund to North Pole High School to support the school's Junior ROTC drill team. $3,000 from the American Legion Con Miller Post 30 to North Pole High to support the school's Junior ROTC drill team and air rifle teams. $3,000 from the American Legion C, Russell Herber Post 57 to North Pole High School to support the school's Junior ROTC drill and air rifle teams. $10,469.59 from the North Pole High School Girls Volleyball Club to North Pole High School to support the school's 2021-2022 volleyball season. And $1,000 from Pat Fodry to West Valley High School for the purchase of student snacks. The personal action report for the period of January, the board has approved the personal action report for the period January 6th through 20th, 2022. The board has acknowledged the personnel information report for the period January 6th through 20th, 2022. The budget transfer report for period January 1 through 15, 2022. The board's reading file and the board's coming events and meeting announcements.
Thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is public comments on reports and non-agenda items. Public comments on reports and non-agenda items, including public input on salaries, benefits, and any other contractual items regarding the Education Support Staff Association, the Fairbanks Education Association, and the Fairbanks Principals Association negotiations. Core value: engage with students, family, staff, and community to support student success. Public comments on reports and non-agenda items are limited to 2 minutes per person for a maximum of 1 hour. People who have signed up in advance through the school board office to testify in person or by Zoom will be called upon first, and if time remains, anyone else who is in person will be invited to testify until a 1 hour time limit has been reached. A person testifying shall state their full name, spelling their last name, and their city of residence for the record. Board members may ask questions for clarification, although there is time at the end of each meeting for school board and superintendent comments. Some concerns may not be able to be addressed immediately, as additional information may be needed to be gathered. Public input is welcome on salaries, benefits, and any other contractual items regarding the ESSA, FEA, and FPA negotiations. Currently, we have one person signed up for the non-agenda item testimony time. John Heron-DeLong. John?
Yes. My name is John Heron DeLong. JOHNHARUN-DELONG. I am from Fairbanks, Alaska. And I would just like to address that I know that the school board volunteers for this, and you put a lot of time into what you do, and it seems like you really care about it. But there was some comments made, I believe, at the end of last school board meeting that students at West Valley High School weren't funneled into the DeWild Theater. And I'd just like to say that this is not true. They were funneled into the DeWild Theater. I was there last Wednesday, and they had 5 to 6 classes in the theater where there wasn't masking required. And this obviously violates the school board charter, which is basically, or the idea that children should have in-person learning and should be kept safe. But paramount seems like the safety of the students should be paramount, and it was not taken into consideration. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Marati?
Thank you for your testimony. We really, we appreciate all testimony, but when it comes from students, it has such a much bigger impact. Can you clarify how many students were in that theater and how long you were in that theater?
Well, I don't know the exact amount, but there was a board outside the DeWild Theater that had all the classes written down on it. And I walked by there a couple times, and I usually saw 4 classes there, but when I went there, there was 5 classes plus the JROTC team who was in the DeWild Theater, and we were there the entire period. And this is in addition to other classes who were there the entire rest of the day, because I was there at the end of the day.
Can you follow up?
Go ahead.
Are we allowed to ask administration for feedback on this at this time, or is this only, no, because it's testimony?
I think because it's testimony, we can follow up with emails and request information at a future date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson, and then Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you. Mr. Heron DeLong, did you bring this up to Mrs. Gillum?
No, I did not. I didn't think about it. It seemed normal at the time, but now I realize it felt like the new normal, which is bad, but yeah, it's not okay. I should have brought it to Mrs. McGillum, but I didn't.
Mr. Rhodes?
I'd just like to clarify, Mr. Long, are you saying that a student could have been in there from 1st all the way to 6th? Or are you saying that a certain teacher's class was there because that teacher was absent?
I'm saying that classes were put there if their teacher was absent and they were unable to get a sub for the class. So theoretically, it would have been possible for a student to be in the DeWild Theater from all periods except extension. But I don't know.
Thank you so much for your testimony and coming before the board this evening.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tuttle, do we have any further testimony?
Not signed up.
Okay, thank you.
Miss, excuse me, President Lou?
Oh,
I had a question.
yes. Go ahead.
My question was there any sort of sanitation process going on in between the classes?
I apologize. I believe the student has logged off. Ms. Tuttle?
Let me see if I can get him back.
Yeah, to answer the question, there was no sanitation that I saw. So, yeah, none.
Mr. Harry DeLong, I really do appreciate you bringing this matter before the board. I do appreciate hearing from the student body, and I thank you for tonight's testimony.
Well, thank you for all the work you guys do.
Thank you so much for hanging around to finish up that last question.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is Agenda Item D, Borough Assembly Report. The Borough Assembly Report, including a report from Mayor Ward on the Borough Capital Improvement Program. Core value, engage with students, families, staff, and community to support student success. Christian Kelly, Borough Assembly member, will provide the Assembly report, and Mayor Bryce Ward will report on the borough's capital improvement program. Thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Ward. The time is yours.
There we go. All right. Sorry to clear my throat in the mic. All right. Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight about the capital improvement program. Per Borough Code, we're to come give a presentation to you on the projects, where they're placed at in the overall 10-year plan, and then offer the ability for you to provide comment both this evening as well as with our next assembly meeting where we have this up for public hearing. So to go through today, we're going to go through the public process that we have for the CIP. We're going to talk about the projects that were nominated by the school district as well as community members, and then talk about where those projects are placed. So this is the process that we have outlined. We've got a public nomination period that started August 1st, went till September 17th. We received about 100 applications or 100 nominations for projects, went through an evaluation process where the Assembly approved scopes and projects to be inserted into our capital improvement program. We then recently concluded our scoring process where we looked at things of a technical nature, such as safety improvements, age of the facility, impact to budget, impact to the environment, things like that, which provided us a scoring for those projects, which we then the administration used to help place into the overall 10-year plan. We are currently at the project placement and plan adoption. The plan has been shared with the Assembly, and we have had one work session on that. And of course, we're here before you this evening to talk about those particular projects. The overall capital improvement program is fiscally constrained. So all of the years that we have, the 10-year plan has a list of expected revenue sources and mechanisms to pay for the projects that are listed within those 10 years. The beyond column, which is the 10th column, is all of the projects that we do not have funding sources for. So it's very possible, and there's several school district projects that are within the capital improvement program that we simply don't have funding sources identified at this time. Through the planning process, if we are to identify funding sources for those projects, we can move them up if we do have the capacity in the workforce. And this is part of our biennial update. So we did this first 2 years ago, and this is our second biennial update, so it's still relatively new. The FY23 CIP school district project scores and projects that were nominated, we have up on the screen. You can see the highest ranking project was the Lathrop High School kitchen repair and improvement. The estimated construction year for that is 2025. It did rank 7th. We do have several other projects in there that are slated to happen a little bit sooner. That's the Tanana Middle School exterior renovation Two Rivers interior renovation, and the North Pole Middle School exterior renovation. We're proposing to use excess bond proceeds from several bond sales that we had a few years ago. As we close out those bonds, they are education bonds. They have to be used for school projects. So these were three projects that fit within, one, the budget that we had available for those remaining bond projects, as well as met a need that we had identified through our nomination process. You can see a number of the projects that scored further down. We had about 100 projects we scored. Many of those are within the 2032 timeframe, which is that beyond category. So we don't have identified any funding streams to pay for those. You'll also see in there Anderson School Renovation Phase 2. This was a project that was previously nominated under the first improvement program, as well as the second improvement program. However, pending decisions by the school board this evening, that project is not within one of our current year plans. So it's again in that 2032 timeframe. 15 school district projects were submitted and scored as part of this process. So within your capital improvement program, you should have copies of these at your dais. You can take a look at where all of the projects are that have been nominated and selected by the Fairbanks-North Borough Assembly, and where those are scheduled to be funded at. Earlier in the plan, it is a cascading spreadsheet, if you will. So the earlier in the plan the projects are, the sooner they are to be funded. This goes over all four phases of the projects. We've got our scoping, design, any land or right-of-way acquisition that may be required as part of those projects, and then ultimately construction, as well as sharing the funding code or the funding mechanism to pay for those projects. The CIPMR is the primary funding mechanism for this. This is the Capital Improvement Maintenance Reserve that was established by the Fairbanks-North Borough Assembly, I think back in the early 90s or late 90s. It was previously known as the FMR, the Facilities Maintenance Reserve, but recently, about a year and a half ago, we changed that to the CIPMR and identified it as the primary funding mechanism for our capital improvement program. On for our next steps, the resolution will be before the Assembly, the resolution that adopts the CIP will be before the Assembly on the 24th of February. We do have public hearing. Comments are welcome anytime between now and then, or at that point during the public hearing in that Assembly meeting, or by email or online as well. Requests, we do have the school board adopt a resolution adopting or recommending the proposed changes and send that to the Assembly. And then ultimately the CIP, once it's adopted, the first year of the capital improvement program becomes the capital budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So that'll be wrapped into our budget process that we have that begins in April and then concludes in May with the adoption of the budget. And I would encourage anyone that's interested in learning more about the capital improvement program, the projects that were nominated, what were selected by the Assembly, which ones were not accepted by the Assembly, to go to our website, fnsb.gov/CIP. We've got lots of videos that explain the process, where we're at in that, in the particular process and what happens next. So be happy to answer any questions if there are any by school board members at this time.
Questions by the school board? Doesn't look like there's any questions.
All right.
Oh, Mr. Doran.
I won't let a good moment go by. In terms of looking at, well, clarification first. You had mentioned that there were some excess funds or funds left over from previous bonds. Was that just for school projects or for other borough projects as well?
Yeah, primarily from the primary funding mechanism were for schools.
Okay, that might have come in under budget or for any variety of reasons.
Yeah, for a number of different reasons. So some of the projects were de-scoped or changed or altered in the actual construction process. Other ones were under budget or there was savings. There has been discussion and request from the Assembly to look into, could you essentially pay down the bonds with those proceeds? Though that is an option to do, although there is no savings to the borough because the interest that's charged is part of the overall bond purchase. So we would continue to make those payments But the proceeds are restricted in their use. They are not to be used for anything other than what the initial bond was proposed for. So in this case, it's education, so we had to make sure it fit within the project scope or those bond scopes.
And if I may, one other question.
Go ahead, Mr. Doran.
In terms of looking at the school projects and the big scope of the CIP borough effort, a lot of these are broken out into phases down the line, and we have a 6-year and a 20-year CIP. Did the CIP, the borough CIP committee, when they scored them, look at the totality of the different phases for the different projects, or you just take it project by project?
I believe that they looked at them project by project. So there are several of the nominations are phase 2, phase 3, I think phase 3 is the farthest that it goes out for those projects. So looking at the totality as in the entire project, it was limited to what was nominated by the by school board member or by the staff.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Ms. Matheson?
Thank you. So I've only skimmed through the projects, but on some of the projects, it looks like, and I'm only pointing out the North Star Athletics because it's the one right here. But it states that this complex would build a new pool, indoor field sports, pickleball, skate parks, party space, concession space, physical therapy, and childcare. We already have a skate park. How would that benefit the community? We have plenty of pools, some of them that we're actually working on in this budget. So how are we being good stewards of the money?
Certainly, great question. So you'll notice the first phase of that project is a scoping project. The scoping phase of that project, so that was recently funded, or it was funded 2 years ago by the Assembly. We're actually just beginning that scoping phase right now. The intent behind that project is to be a multi-phase project. We do have several of our pools which need to be replaced, which is where I think the concept originally started from. So in order to replace those particular facilities, we're looking at a facility that could be expanded upon. So it's anticipated, I would say anticipated, that the first phase of that project would be to replace the pools, particularly the Mary Sy and Hammy pool, and then be able to put it in a location that can be expanded to meet other needs. So the scoping process will outline which facilities it would be replacing, which facilities would be included in any new construction, and then the phasing of those particular projects. And you notice the construction, the design phase of that are in the out years because we don't have any way or any mechanism identified to pay for that at this point. You will also note, and you mentioned that we do have a number of maintenance repair projects for those particular facilities. This was a difficult decision when we looked at the overall projects that were nominated. In order for us to keep those facilities open, they do require capital maintenance work to be done, particularly the pool plaster. It's beyond its useful life. The plaster is beginning to come off the walls. So if we want to keep those facilities open for any time in the extended future, then we have to do that work. Same with the roof repairs, mechanical upgrades. So it is certainly a long-term project, one that we're looking at building a plan for the future. The intent is to take other facilities that we're currently using and then find out a way that we can manage them together. So.
Thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing the capital improvement projects or program. We always appreciate seeing you in our boardroom, and we look forward to seeing you in April for the budget meeting.
Certainly, my pleasure.
Next up on the agenda is the President's Report. Goals and objective, ensure students, staff, families, and the community are informed, connected, and engaged with the district. And I have the President's Report. I wanted to let everybody know that this past weekend we had a board training on Friday. We focused Our training was through AASB, the Alaska Association of School Boards. Tiffany came and she did an incredible job on helping the board understand charters a little bit better, understanding the general overview, roles, responsibilities, and a review of the charter approval process. And then on Saturday, we spent quite a bit of time discussing the board committee work. We worked on the purpose of board committees, as well as discussing creating an ad hoc committee to update our policies, our board policies, and work with administration on the ARs for these committees. We want to ensure that our policies are updated to the intent of the board's desire for these committees, and ensure that the description and the work within these committees are within our policies themselves. Also, February 14th, we will begin the budget process. This will be the focus for the next 2 months as we ensure that the budget process is a solid plan for next year. And we're looking further into the future and ensuring that we have solid ground to move forward to and move to the Borough Assembly. We do have a Borough Assembly meeting scheduled for April 14th, where Mrs. Moline, Mr. DeGraw, and I will be presenting the school district budget at that time for the borough for them to review and approve. That is what I have at this time. Also, I apologize, one more thing. We also know that this item tonight is a big discussion, the school efficiency and school closures. And it can definitely be an emotional issue and an emotional topic for all involved. And this is such a great time to remind ourselves, all of us, as we discuss this and as we have testimony, to remember to continue with appropriate decorum. As we discuss this topic, we will require all people within this room and within Zoom to be respectful of those who will be addressing the board when it is their time to testify, as well as making sure that the board and all those involved can be considerate as we consider and vote on these topics this evening. We want to ensure that as people are up testifying later on this evening, that we allow them to speak and that we don't have disruptions, so that we can allow an atmosphere appropriate, that the board can hear those testimonies and be able to conduct board business. We appreciate the respectful manner that everybody is in this room, and the support that they are giving. And I think that is all for now from me. We would like to turn over to the Chief School Administrator report. Chief School Administrator, including updates on transportation and the budget. Goals and objective: ensure students, staff, families, and the community are informed, connected, and engaged with the district. Chief School Administrator, Ms. Moline, will provide her report, including updates on transportation and budget.
Thank you. The update on the transportation situation is that there have been significant call-outs or absenteeism with our drivers, which has prevented us from restoring the routes that we had hoped to at this point. So we do plan on restoring more routes as the absenteeism or call-out rates come back within a manageable level. We have added new drivers and we've lost a few drivers. And with that, we do have a net gain of 5 new drivers over the last month. And we also have 5 fully certified instructors that are ready to go for applicants that may be in the pipeline. President Luke spoke to our budget process. February 14th will be a work session in which the administration presents the proposed budget to the board. On the 15th will be a regular board meeting where we'll go over that proposed budget. There will be a number of opportunities for the public to offer input at regular meetings through this entire budget process. The board will make their final decisions on the recommended budget by sometime late in March, and that recommended budget will move to the borough by April 1st. So just a brief COVID update. We are cautiously optimistic on the numbers that we're seeing, and there's a downward trend in our positivity rates in our schools at this point as we continue to be cautious, courteous, and clean. And finally, I would like to just mention that the Teaching and Learning Department is offering tutoring to some of our ESSA employees who are required to take a Praxis Test and are struggling with passing their Praxis Test. They're offering one-on-one tutoring for those individuals to support them to be fully qualified to pass their test and move forward. That concludes my report.
Ms. Marotti?
Thank you for the report. You mentioned that there's been a significant number of call-outs due to absenteeism. Are we aware of what is causing the absenteeism?
I don't know. If it's like generally, there's a number of reasons that there might be call-outs.
May I follow up? I think it's clear that it is most likely COVID related. And I feel like if we did better mitigating, we could reduce the significant call-outs due to absenteeism. And I think that is in contrary to the cautious optimism that we are stating tonight.
Ms. Matheson?
I didn't quite catch, you said the Praxis test was for ESSA or for?
Yes.
Yeah.
So some of our ESSA employees are required to pass a Praxis test. The some of the instructional support staff, and so in their process, they've struggled to pass. So Teaching and Learning is supporting them and tutoring them through their test taking and helping them get the certifications that they need.
Ms. Smith? Oh, we're good? Mr. Doran?
Thank you, President Luke. Ms. Milleen, could you explain a little bit more what you're seeing in terms of for the schools? We know that there's been, or we hear reports of significant student absence, staff absence, groups having to double up in areas, maybe more than that. And I want to recognize asking my question that I know staff and students and parents have really done a lot in their efforts to meet these needs. But I guess, but my concern is in asking the question, where are we headed with this? We may see some decline, but we still have a lot of this going on. Some schools are in modified, some classrooms, things like this. But moving forward, how you're seeing this develop and how we can really support schools and staff and students through this process.
Yeah, there's a lot packed into that question. We have a number of schools in modified operations now, and they're going to be moving out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We are seeing a downward trend, which is encouraging both with staff and teachers. And I will note that all of our bus drivers are required to mask while they're driving. So that mitigation tool has been in place forever and is a requirement of the federal government that our bus drivers wear masks and students on the bus wear masks. So that's a mitigation that's in place and will remain in place until the federal government changes. As far as the staffing goes, we're seeing improvement. And I think we can expect improvement. And if we follow the trends of the country that we're seeing across the country, there has been the spike of the Omicron virus. It spikes quickly and then starts on a downward trajectory. In conversations around the state and with state level health officials, that's the kind of trend that we're expecting to see coming up in our state as well. And I think we're seeing that a bit in our community that we're following that trend. I think to look forward to not as many staff absences, not the need to double up on classes, and the reality that doubling up on classes doesn't mean necessarily that there's 2 full classes, because student absenteeism has happened as well. And I would like to just give a moment to Assistant Superintendent Meinert to speak of the combining of classes into an auditorium at the high school level, and how that's playing out in our high schools. So Assistant Superintendent Meinert, if you want to speak to that now.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Moline. So specifically to the West Valley situation that was brought up tonight, they did go into the DeWild Auditorium. The DeWild Auditorium seats approximately 250 students or personnel that could access that area. At any given time, there weren't more than 85 students in the auditorium. Students also only had 1 or 2 classes that would have been in that auditorium. Most students only had 1. There might have been a handful of students that had 2. And really, students did have the opportunity to social distance in the auditorium, even more so than they might have had in regular classes. Unfortunately, this is something that we've had to revert to throughout the pandemic in our high schools. Fortunately, West Valley, this doesn't happen on a regular occasion because their subfill rate is higher than some of our other high schools. I'm sure Mr. Rhodes has encountered this at North Pole High. I've seen it a few times as I've been out there in the cafeteria, that oftentimes an assistant principal is subbing for multiple classrooms in the cafeteria due to the lack of subs. And so I know as a district, we're working hard on continuing to fill subs. We've made some great improvements this year in the flexibility of attracting new subs to our applicant pool. But that's really what's hampering some of our efforts right now, is just not getting enough subs into our building to help out with personnel that call out.
And along those lines, we did just have 40 new subs or go through an orientation. And I'm sure you're aware that we have a new pay structure and requirement structure that we're hoping will increase our sub pool. And it's working. We have 40 new individuals that have gone through the orientation. So those are some of the steps that we're taking to help support staff as we ride this upward surge and watch it take a downward trend.
Thank you. I really appreciate that update, and again want to reinforce the appreciation for the work of staff and students and families with it. I will say that I am disappointed, not in any of those efforts and the people involved with those, but just in the situation. As we, I believe, still lead the nation in cases, COVID cases right now, and that we got to this situation. But I do understand you're following board decisions, so I appreciate your efforts to do it and to the best of your ability.
Ms. Sanderson?
Yes, thank you, President Luke. So my question is, with the anticipation next month of spring break, and we have a possibility of a new surge, are we gonna take a look at just continue to follow the mitigation plan, the layered mitigation plan, or look at the masking to the end of the year? I'm just curious about that.
At this point, the plan and the direction of the board has been to follow our mitigation plan and look at the numbers, follow the plan that we've had in place, and continue the layered approach.
Thank you.
Mr. Rhodes, and then Ms. Marati.
So Mr. Meinart was correct. North Pole, I'm a 3 AP student. I'm taking trig this year. I certainly have a full plate. I actually had an English teacher, my English AP teacher for American Lit was absent for a full month, completely not due to COVID. And most teachers these days are very tech savvy. So if they do miss a couple days, it's not that big of a deal. We had worked that entire space and we were able to complete that work on some epic level unless we were not diligent. So I don't know necessarily how I had COVID a little bit ago and I had missed a couple days of school. And well, I'm looking pretty chipper in front of you right now. I'd also like to point out that Oregon State University, it's OSHU, recently did a study and found that if you were to catch Omicron and be vaccinated, you get quote unquote super immunity, which means you're like 10 times.
Point of order, that's misinformation. Please, it is.
Okay, we're gonna, thank you. Did you have a question for Ms. Moline?
Well, I was addressing school atmosphere, and there's been several comments tonight that I felt that that statement was very warranted, and I definitely didn't like the assertion from Mr. Doran that it's not doing what it's supposed to do according to board norms.
I'm going to remind the board, all members of the board, that we will keep communication respectful with each other and high decorum here on the diocese. Ms. Marati?
My question is that in regards to the students in the auditorium, are they learning in the auditorium? Are they given lessons or an opportunity to learn while they're in there?
Mr. Meyer?
I think Mr. Rhodes stated it nicely that many of our teachers use Google Classroom on a regular basis, and so that students in a high school setting do continue their education. Many high school students can do self-directed learning at that age group, and so it is not a wasted day of instruction. Students are busy working on classwork, even though they might not have that particular teacher in front of them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Meinert. Any further questions? Oh, Ms. Sanderson?
Sorry, President Luke, I'm taking my hand down.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we are up to our next agenda item, unfinished business, policy 542, conditions of employment, job description, second reading.
Move to approve second reading, public hearing, and adoption of policy 542, conditions of employment.
Okay.
Goals and objectives. Create an environment that supports the strengths and needs of staff so they can create a safe climate where students thrive. Policy 542, conditions of employment, job descriptions, is before the board for second reading. There were no changes from first reading. Ms. Ivy McDaniel, Executive Director of Human Resources, is available for questions. Are there any questions? I'd like to turn time over to Ms. Moline if there's anything further from administration.
Concerning the policy?
Yes, ma'am.
At this point, we don't have anything further to add to the policy changes. So we're ready to move this policy forward.
Any further questions from the board? Mrs. Tuttle, it looks as though we have no one signed up for testimony. Is there anyone in the room that would like to testify on this item of business? Seeing none, Mrs. Tuttle, it looks as though we are ready for the vote.
Mr. Rhodes?
Yes.
Thank you. Colonel Williamson?
Yes.
Thank you. Colonel Surrey?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Luke?
Yes,
Thank you. Motion carried.
thank you. Our next item of business is H, action item, new business, facility utilization action item. Goal and objective, create an environment that supports the strengths and needs of staff so they can create a safe climate where students thrive. The board, at its May 18th, 2021 regular meeting, voted to undertake a facilities utilization study, which was completed by Western Demographics. At the board's direction, the administration assembled a facilities efficiency task force consisting of parents, community members, and staff to consider the findings from the study and provide its recommendations. The board has been reviewing and discussing the task force recommendations. Leah Filippi from CEDOR, Wenton, Evans, and Filippi is online to serve as a parliamentarian and guide us through this process. Can I get a motion?
Move to close Anderson Elementary School and Joy Elementary School effective with the 2022-2023 school year.
Is there a second to Mr.
Second.
Because that is not the original, yes, Mr. Dorn, I just want to double check. Because it is not the original motion, do we go to public testimony first, or do we allow Mr. Doran to speak to the motion?
It's the main motion, and so normally you just go to public testimony.
Thank you. I will go to public testimony, and then I will come back.
Okay. It might be helpful if I can just give a context and then I'll speak later for the public to understand that it's one of three motions under this topic, so we will address all the issues as advertised.
Quickly, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that this is in light of the original advertised motion, recommended motion, that this is the first of three to separate the three topics out. One to address closing school, one to address alternative programs, and one to address 6-8. And so I will subsequently have two more motions to make, just so they know the full breadth.
We will go straight into testimony. We have our first from Jessica Wagner. If you are joining us from Zoom, if you will just let us know your name, spell out your last name, give us your area of residence, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Ms. Wagner, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Good evening. My name is Jessica Wagner, W-A-G-N-E-R. I'm a Fairbanks resident. Today, I would like to ask that you choose not to close Joy. I have reviewed the findings given by Western Demographics Incorporated to the board. I'm confused as to how all the options given by the committee had Joy closing. Joy scored 9 and Ann Ween only scored a 6 on the tech and ratings of the building systems. They both had planned improvements, though the task force report only mentions Joy's. Square footage was also considered. Ann Ween is about 3,000 more square feet than Joy, but Joy is over 11,000 more than Denali, 830 more than Hunter. Ann Ween and Joy both are located next to the Creamersfield Refuge. Their location provides better air quality, educational opportunities, and activities that celebrate Alaska's resources. The company's findings also state that these plans for combining elementary schools will have little improvement in instructional support level of service. This seems to contradict what is being publicized. Proficiency in Ann Ween's English language is about 17 percentage points less than Joy's, and Denali's is about 10% points less. My son is a student at Joy, and a concern I have that is shared by the company is the special education program. Having one of the highest rates of low-income families and number of children with disabilities, Joy provides a supportive environment. Joy also has facilities that help children with disabilities function and learn life skills. Children with disabilities are highly influenced by any change in their environment and care providers. Knowing this, Joy's pre-K and kindergarten teachers transition their kiddos so their milestones aren't lost. Will you commit to supporting and seeing this endeavor implemented if you end up closing Joy? These children are some of the most vulnerable in our community. I hope before you make this decision, you know the details and ensure the benefits to the students will be worth what it will cost them.
Thank you so much. That was time. That was 2 minutes. We appreciate your testimony this evening.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Michaela Perez via Zoom. Michaela, if you will state your name, spell out your last name, and give us your area of residence, and then you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Michaela Perez, Perez, and I live in the Hamilton Acres area. I went to school K through 12 in the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District, and I am a parent to a 5th grader at Nordale. Because of the amazing staff at Nordale, I enrolled back into Fairbanks North Star Borough School District this year after spending a year with IDEA during the prime time of the pandemic. If it wasn't for Miss Erin Harvey and being supportive with my son's IEP and helping us, I really don't think I would have went back into the district. Because of Nordale and the amazing staff there, my son is thriving. Having been an early childhood educator in this town and having worked with both Joy and Nordale's SPED pre-Ks and being a parent of a child with an IEP myself, I ask that the district reconsider the closing of these schools. Both of these schools are Title I schools, and it concerns me that the classrooms will get bigger, but the buildings won't. The teachers are going to be more burnt out, and I'm unsure if the kids will get the same services that they are getting now with smaller class sizes and the assistants. Some of the most vulnerable families are going to be impacted the most with Title I schools being greatly affected by the change. I'm considering how this saves money when you looked at the efficiency options when the $3.5 million was with not the option that's being primarily looked at. And children count on these schools for stability and safety. So I just ask that the district reconsider closing these schools, looking at different options, and focusing on our kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ms. Matheson has a question.
So Ms. Perez is unsure if our students will get the support that they need. And I know that Mrs. LaPlante, that would probably be something that you could answer. How will we, if the school does close, how would we support especially our SPED students?
Answers from the administration will have to be given at the time of the presentation. So if you'll just write that question down to make sure that we can address that one after testimony's over. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Perez. Next, we have Renee Heflin. If you will just state your name, spell your last name, give us your area of residence, and you will have 2 minutes.
Hello? Oh, you can hear me. My name is Renee Heflin. It's spelled H-E-F as in Frank, L-I-N as in Nancy. I'm a resident of Fairbanks, Alaska. So we really need to fiscally be responsible to the taxpayers and make decisions based on what we can actually afford. Taxpayers do need to be heard. With option one has really not been talked about, and administration is not in favor of closing Nordale. They never discussed another school to be closed either. Cost savings would be about $3 million. So in option two, keeping a 7-8 model and repurposing of Randy Smith has not been discussed. A 7-8 model would round out the 2 junior highs to about an 85% capacity and leaves room for growth. The option had the highest cost savings, and all the proposals over $3 million savings. Option one is being pushed by the administration. So they want to take a new building away from the neighborhood families and give it to Best Homeschooling and other alternative learning programs, their own building, when these programs can easily be housed at other underutilized schools. They want a 6-8 model. This model will push the 3 middle schools to a 96% capacity. It will set those schools up for larger class sizes and overcrowding. It also will leave no growth for the students to return post-pandemic, or if there is an increase to military personnel. It'll decrease the utilization of every elementary school in the district. The option will have over 1,200 K through 6 students moving to new schools in the fall. It includes reconfiguration, modifications associated with repurposing, as well as costs with moving a playground and 6-8 curriculum. It is the lowest cost savings of all the options that will be well under $3 million in savings. Because of the pandemic, students across the nation are having social, emotional, and academic deficiencies that desperately need to be addressed.
That was time.
Speak as quick as I could.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for testifying. Next, we have Brandy Hardy, and Brandy will be joining us via Zoom. If you could state your name, spell your last name, give us your area of residence, and you will have 2 minutes.
My name is Brandy Hardy. My last name is Harty, and I'm a resident of Fairbanks. I know that we face a $17 million budget shortfall this year and that cuts must be made. I have accepted those cuts may require 1 or more schools to close. What I do not accept is the admin current stance that the motion currently before the board is the best way to accomplish those cuts. The motion before the board in no way represents what was recommended by the task force created for this issue. Specifically, I will address the recommendation to repurpose one of the newest schools as a home for alternative programs. I listened to the last work session on the issues and was shocked to hear Mr. DeGraw reference the field of dreams as a reason to back this plan. I am sorry, but winging a decision and just hoping the investment pays off seems like a pretty poor business plan to me. From a customer service perspective, there are far more students enrolled in our neighborhood schools than in our homeschool program, so I would encourage you to improve your customer service offerings there first. I was also mentioned by a member of the board that we are repurposing to provide the best educational opportunity for students who are somewhat marginalized by our services. However, you cannot choose to be marginalized. Marginalization is a social condition, not a result of choices. Homeschool is a choice, one that comes with its pros and cons. All alternative programs have cost and benefit trade-offs. By choosing to not attend a neighborhood school, which is always an option to return to at any time, you are not being marginalized, you are making a choice. A member also stated that homeschoolers are our students and they deserve our best space possible. While homeschoolers are district students, they are not a class above other district students. All students deserve access to a free and fair public education. The community of Nordale is made up of students who also deserve to learn in the best space possible. Displacing an entire community for no other reason than to provide a space for others who have made the choice not to attend their neighborhood schools is quite frankly an insult to the community of Norridale. As other members stated, there are many open rooms and times when homeschoolers can access gyms and meeting spaces. And I wholeheartedly support the district in developing an easy and accessible way for our homeschoolers population to be able to access those spaces.
Ms. Hardy, that's time.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you guys are excited, but I would just ask that you refrain from the noise. Thank you. Next, we have Joseph Reuter. If you could come up, state your name, give us your spell your last name, give us your area of residence, and then you will have 2 minutes to testify.
My name's Joseph Ritter. My last name's spelled Rueter. I'm a resident of Fairbanks. At Joy, most of the kids know me as Mr. R. Yeah, okay. I first want to express my gratitude for the volume of work the administration's put into all these potential solutions to our financial shortfall. There's no simple one-off fixes here. This is not easy. I also want to acknowledge the board for all its patience and diligent work overseeing the administration's proposals. I want to ask that all the board view this proposal to shut down schools, not just from a facilities view and a numbers view, but also that the decision will affect a fully functioning community of learners, their families, and the staff that serve them. I want to thank the board for its important position in this decision-making process, that of not micromanaging your administration, but ensuring a careful assessment of that this proposal measures up against the policies and goals the board has established for the operation of our school district. And it's to this dynamic between the board and the administration I want to talk. With regard to these duties, I'd like to speak tonight. From our strategic plan, our top 2 goals are student success and equity and inclusion. I would like the board to focus on its role with regard to these goals as it considers the proposed options for school efficiency. Has the administration, in its efforts to come up with a solution to our fiscal crisis, followed our guiding principles of assuring equity and diversity? Has it weighed the impacts on the large at-risk population at Joy and Nordale? Has a careful analysis been done to see how to equitably share negative impacts of school closure more fully across our Fairbanks community, instead of expecting 1 or 2 school communities to shoulder this burden? And where in the formation of these proposals are these important factors of equity and inclusion?
Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you. Next, we have Shandy Stanfill. If you will come up, say your name, spell out your last name, and give us your area of residence, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Hi, my name is Shandy Stanfill. It's Stanfill, and I am from Fairbanks. I wanted to speak tonight without crying, but I'm trying not to. My son goes to Nordale. We want Nordale to stay open. My son is succeeding because of Nordale. My son needs Nordale, and so do all the kids there, and all the kids at Joy need what they have, and they need it to stay how it is because these kids have trouble with change. These kids are in these programs because they have trouble with change, and they are succeeding because of the programs they're in. They can't have it taken away. You need to follow your mission. You need to read your mission again and again before you vote. My son would like to speak tonight. I hope you'll hear him, because how this turns out really matters for him, and the only reason he's succeeding is because of Nordale. There are many other ways to fix a budget. I know that all of you know that there are many other ways to fix this budget. I really would propose that K through 8 would be a better way to fix all of this. All of your junior highs would then turn into elementaries that house K through 8. Had my son had a K through 8 option all his life, he would have been succeeding all his life. Too much change has been too much for him, and with COVID, it's just not fair. All these kids have missed out on a lot of their last 2 years of education. They need this time to continue getting used to routines again and transitioning again. It's not fair to put them through so much more unnecessary change right now. Not now. There are other options. There are other ways. Please read your mission again and again. And please hear my son when he speaks, because this matters for him as much as it matters for all the kids there. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for testifying. Next, we have Kyler Lance. If you'll just state your name, spell your last name, and give us your area of residence.
Hi, my name is Kyler Lanz, Lanz, and Nordale is really important to me. If this school closes, I won't be able to talk to my friends anymore. I also worry that my only other option is to homeschool. I don't want to homeschool, but transitions are hard for me. So that might be what I have to do. The teachers at Nordale are way better than the teachers at other schools I've gone to. You really get me. I've made many good friends at Nordale. I would miss them if we didn't go to the same school anymore. And I'm used to this school. Transitions are very difficult for me. I have gotten comfortable enough at Nordale that I am in the school musical and I play violin in the orchestra. I like these activities so much. I am grateful for the opportunity to do them at Nordale. I am grateful for all Nordale has done for me. I want it to stay open.
Kyler, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for coming and testifying. Lauren Atanis? I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, but you're joining us from Zoom. If you'll just state your name, spell your last name, and give us your area of residence, and you will have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I feel like my testimony should now be what Kyler said, but I'll still give my testimony. My name is Lauren Atanas, that's Attanas, and I'm from Fairbanks. The school district administration has recommended the closure of 2 Title I elementary schools as part of its plan to save millions of dollars in the coming fiscal year. To add insult to this injury, some board members in the administration want to direct scarce financial resources away from neighborhood schools and towards the Fairbanks Best program by repurposing Nordale Elementary to the tune of nearly $250,000 annually. The school efficiency FAQ on the website claims that Best is deserving of this annual bump in spending because it's the 3rd largest school in the district. But dubious statistics from the 2 most anomalous years this school district has seen in recent history. The average enrollment at Best since 2003 is approximately 318 students, about the same as the current enrollment at Joy Elementary. The bump in homeschool enrollment is being driven by a pandemic that, in the words of some school board members, is not going to last forever. It seems to me that homeschooling and school choice champions are using these proposed school closures as an opportunity to divert resources from the students who need them the most and to the students with some of the most flexibility and resources. According to district data, 84.8% of students enrolled in Best are not economically disadvantaged, compared to 68.7% of students in the rest of district schools. Some school board members might look at the cost of repurposing a school as mere drops in the bucket compared to the fiscal shortfall the district faces. But $250,000 per year could pay the salary of 2 full-time teachers. There seems to be no appetite for saving money by repurposing underutilized space in district buildings as recommended by the School Efficiency Task Force. If the district is truly looking for efficiencies, why aren't you considering this type of repurposing, which will save the district almost $389,000? Signaling out the Best homeschooling program for special privileges in this time of severe austerity is unconscionable and flies in the face of the district's stated mission to promote excellence and equity for all. Please follow the recommendation of your own task force. Do not repurpose the school for use by the homeschooling and other alternative programs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we have Wendy Dominique via Zoom. If you'll state your name, spell your last name, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Hey, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. This is Wendy Dominique, Dominique, and I live in Fairbanks. I would like to first comment on giving the review and the hard work that has been done to get this proposal on the school board agenda. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and I've heard a lot of people give them the compliments they need. I only have 2 minutes, so I'm gonna rush through it. Second, I would like to say, in 1990, I served on the boundary committee for Ann Ween School. It was a brand new school that was built. It was in a community over in the Aurora area. No one wanted to move to that school, but they wanted a new school. So they got it. Kids had to be across the street from one another, and some went to Joy, some of them went to the new school. I'll move on to my next point. Then it was a school, 1992. Arctic Light opened in 1993. My kids went to LAD. They had moved over from Birch School to LAD. LAD had to have my kids go to Nordell because there was a new building being built on Fort Wainwright, which was Arctic Light. There are a lot of things that have happened in the past that are coming about today. The pandemic has caused what is happening right now. I support the decision of the board to close the 3 schools that have been chosen. There have been a lot of schools that have been built, closed, and things have happened in the past. The pandemic has put us in a situation that no one wants it to be. No one wants their schools closed, but we have to do something in order to have our kids educated. And I think each and every one of you would agree that we want to educate our kids in the best way possible. And I understand about student needs. I was on the board for 17 years. There's a lot of things that go into this decision. And I think the decision that they're about to do is the best decision possible for this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dominique. Oh, Ms. Matheson.
Ms. Dominique, you said that your children had to move schools twice. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, but we were on Fort Wainwright, and my children went to a school called Birch School at Fort Wainwright. We moved off of Fort Wainwright when we decided to stay here in Alaska, and my kids went to LAD for like 1 or 2 years, I can't remember. But we had to move from LAD over to Nordell because they were building the new school on Fort Wainwright, which was Arctic Light. So we had to move to Nordell for 1 year, and then they moved us back to LAD after the new school was built. And we were military families, so I understand about the military conditions that go on, and I understand having a school closed. I was very upset when I had to move my kids that many times, but there are things that have to be done.
And Ms. Dominique, how did they handle that moving?
What do you mean by handle it?
Were they successful after their move? What type of support do we need to do if we are moving for our children?
I feel, especially in the area of special needs, I have a daughter-in-law that she's a clerk for special needs. There is a lot of attention that has to be done with those students. And when you move a student like that, I understand what the parents are saying about how they make that connection with their teachers. But what if those teachers moved wherever those students were going to move? There's a problem that's resolved right there. And a lot of those teachers will go with the students where they go. Special education is high priority, which I know you know, Ms. Matheson, for all our students. And it's more now than ever.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dominique, for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Nicole Eisman here in the room. If you'll state your name, spell your last name, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Nikki Eisman, Nickyeisman, Fairbanks. I'm here to ask that the school efficiency vote be divided up into 3 separate votes. Closing schools, repurposing schools, and reconfiguring schools are 3 separate issues, and as such, should be voted on separately. I'd like to speak specifically against repurposing Nordale. In 2002, voters and taxpayers in the borough, recognizing that Nordale was a longstanding, vibrant neighborhood school community housed in an aging building, voted to allocate funds via school bonds that would be used to tear down the existing structure and build a new one. Nordale is the newest elementary school in our district. Just for reference, Rick Soley was the borough presiding officer at the time, and Bart Laban was the school board president. I cannot think of any reason to destroy an existing thriving school community in the newest elementary school in our district. To do so is an insult to the taxpayers and voters of this community and their intentions. I've read the district's rationale for repurposing Nordale, and while I recognize that homeschool students are borough students and deserve access to a facility, I know that there are many other ways that access can be achieved. They currently have access to PE, music, and library in their neighborhood schools, and high school students have access as well. We know that there are multiple schools throughout the district that have open classroom space for all the needs that the administration is stating we need to do this repurposing for. I know that BEST is saying that they could be more competitive if they had a better space, but I'm talked to several families who have chosen Cyberlinks rather than BEST and feel like perhaps BEST could do some evaluation of how they operate and what they could do better, and how they could bring more students in, that more space is not going to do it alone. Thank you.
That's time.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Next, we have E.J. Reed. If you will say your name, spell your last name, give us your city of residence, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Which name? My first name is E.J. Reed. The E stands for Edward, the J stands for J, of course.
I love
The reasons why I want Joy to stay open, one, because I love seeing my friends. 2, Mrs. Cole is there, and she's my favorite teacher because she's the best. Mr. R is the best because he lets me take breaks and helps me calm down. Number 4, Miss Clancy lets me play stick bots, and she teaches me how to say things clearly because I sometimes stutter all the time. Miss Cara helps me at the front desk. Number 6, Joy is my second home and is a part of my family, which it has all of my friends in it. And if my friends be taken away, I will be upset. Plus, the reason why I like being at Joy is because I've been at Joy since I was 4 years old in kindergarten. I liked being in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, which I'm at. Which I don't want my teacher being taken away, and I really do not like having to be alone in a middle school seeing 14-year-olds being scared, and I can tell my time is almost up.
Good job speaking. Thank you so much for speaking. That one
Thank you.
deserves a clap. Thank you. We have Rachel Reed next. If you'll state your name, spell your last name, give us your area of residence, and you should be very proud of your children that testify tonight.
My name is Rachel Reed. Last name is R-E-A-D. And you guys just heard from my son and his reasons for wanting to keep Joy open. And it's been brought up, but everyone likes to play the numbers game. Let's play numbers, let's play efficiency. Okay, everyone talks about North Pole, how successful North Pole is with their 6th to 8th grade. Has anybody looked at the fact that North Pole is only operating at 74%? You want to pack our middle schools at 96% and 342 special ed teachers or special ed kids. Currently, if you combine all 3 schools, you have 10 teachers. That is a 34-to-1 ratio. Then if you want to bring in, okay, well, we can take the teachers from Nordale and Joy. That only puts you at 22 teachers. But then you have to figure out self-inclusion classes. You have to figure out aides. You have to figure out everything else. The absolute lowest number that I could come to was a 16-to-1 special education ratio, which from my understanding, based on the law, it can only be either a 10-to-1 or a 15-to-1. There's a little bit of a discrepancy there, but the highest number that I found is a 15-to-1. The board is already saying, we can't fill these positions. So now you're going to throw 342 special ed kids into a building that you can't fill positions on, and you expect for them to succeed. How? They can't succeed if they don't have the instruction. The board has already told you, we have trouble filling positions. Even if you take all the special ed from Nordale and from Joy, you still don't have enough. So where are these people gonna magically come from? Or is my son gonna suffer? He already comes home crying. I tried to have a conversation with him yesterday and he bawled his eyes out. I'm gonna lose my friends. I'm gonna lose my Mr. R. I'm gonna lose my second home. And as a mom, how am I supposed to take that? I can't console him because I don't know where he's going. You don't know where he's going. They don't know where he's going. So I can't console him. But I just have one favor to ask real quick, if it's okay. If you choose to close Joy today, all I ask is that you look at him and you tell him that it is your decision to close it. Because the anger that he has, I don't want directed at me. He needs to know that it's your decision and not mine.
Thank you for your testimony. Right. Just remind the public to please keep applause down. Krista Zoe is next. If you will come, state your name, spell your last name, and give us your area of residence, and you will have 2 minutes.
My name is Krista Zody. My last name is spelled Z-O-D-Y, and I'm from Fairbanks. Feel emotional from the last one. I'm reaching out as a Nordale parent and a current mental health provider in the Fairbanks community. As a parent, I have witnessed my 2 children have amazing experience as students, and they have been surrounded by supportive, understanding, compassionate, trauma-informed staff who have actively prioritized Nordale student needs. I have witnessed the staff's dedication, hard work ethic, and compassion to offer educational and social emotional development support in a trauma-informed approach. As a mental health provider, I am concerned at the potential trauma impact paired with mental and emotional repercussions that the school closure may have on these students and families. Title I schools that have many students and families who have experienced social, economic life hardships paired with trauma experiences that impact daily life. A potential argument to my statement may be that children are resilient. Resilience to development can have risk and barriers for vulnerable populations, such as those under Title I services. These risks and barriers include many things, such as imbalance between school and personal life, overexposure to stressful events that impact executive functioning, life transitions, such as a school closure, time and space to process negative feelings and emotions, shaming, humiliating, dismissing language such as, they'll bounce back, they'll get over it, I've been through worse. Social isolation, which we all know kids have experienced over this COVID time period. Parental discord, child welfare involvement, abuse. I get emotional because I see this every day, right? So my question and curiosity is, why would we choose to close these Title I schools with a vulnerable population, given the knowledge and students and their barriers, stressors, and traumas, and with the potential social, emotional, negative repercussions of school closure? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we have Camille Hull. If you'll come up, state your name, spell your last name, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Hi, my name is Camille Hull, Hull. I'm from Fairbanks. I'm the Nordell Student Body President. I'm here to speak on behalf of the students at Nordell. We absolutely don't want to give up our school. We want you to hear our voices. I interviewed some of the students at Nordell, and these are some of the comments that they made. My dad thinks that 6th graders are too young to go to middle school, and I will have to go. I don't want to close Nordell because I love Nordell, and I'm friends with most of the teachers, and I will not be able to see them. It will affect my two little sisters because they will have to go to a different school. They really like this school. It will affect me because I have been to this school for a long time, and I do not want to go to a different school. When I got elected, it was the happiest day of my life. I am proud to represent the students at our school. I hope I'm not the last student body president at Nordell. I hope there will be many more students who will get the opportunity as well. My hope is that you hear our voices and take into consideration how much we love our school. I just want to thank some of my teachers at Nordell because when I came to Nordell, they really helped me. I was super shy in kindergarten, and they really helped me. Thank you, everyone that is trying to save Nordell. Remember, save Nordell, save the students, save all of the Nordell Tigers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for testifying. Next, we have Heather Demario. If you will come up, state your name, spell your last name, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Hello, my name is Heather Demario, Damario. You can pronounce it both ways. I am from, I just bought a house in Fairbanks, so I'm from Fairbanks now, not North Bow. Okay. I would appreciate if this school district took more time searching history and thinking critically on masking, on the curriculum, and now on this closing neighborhood schools proposal. Ms. Wendy Dominique explained very clearly the trials and tribulations that families went through. Why would you want to do that again? Closing neighborhood schools to save money has historically been unsuccessful. It is a plan that is neither innovative or forward-thinking. Rahm Emanuel closed schools all across Chicago using almost the exact same wording and reasoning that you all are using in Hartford, in Detroit, in Pittsburgh, and so on. A 10-year study was done on this prehistoric idea, and it reveals the effects on kids, families, and especially the broader community and neighborhoods, and how it disproportionately affects kids and families. The economics of your plan is severely flawed, or you are being dishonest. The survey you sent said you can close schools or lay off staff. The only way school closures save money is if you lay off all the staff in those buildings and then some. And we are already short on resources, as mentioned earlier with our lack of subs. So please consider options that are actually viable. Closing neighborhood schools is reckless and irresponsible. I travel to conferences with my students and meet educators and kids from all over the world. And let's just say it's clear that our district is often stagnant or regressive. People move to communities and also away from communities based on the actions of school districts. And based on this plan, this could hurt our neighborhoods. So find a way to create opportunity and you will increase your population and break this cycle. I'd appreciate it if you started to use your power to create things rather than destroy them. I know you've already made up your minds on this plan, so I'm just suggesting in the future that you cast your net more widely in making your decisions that impact an entire community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Demario.
You are very welcome. Are there any questions?
Ms. Matheson?
Hi, Ms. Demario.
Hello.
So you were saying that this closing down schools is regressive.
Mm-hmm.
What other options would you have us consider instead?
Well, you're dealing with a very large budget. If you have the time, we can certainly sit down and discuss it. You obviously know how to get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to meet with you to discuss all the possible options. But again, I'm not the person that you should be talking to. Our net should be cast much more widely outside of our district and within our district to find viable situations. But the 10-year study does reveal that closing down schools is harmful for kids and for the community in which the schools are closed down. So yes, there are a lot of different options. I'm saying that this is not the best one. So I'm not here to give you all of the options, but you certainly know how to find me. West Valley, 7:30 to 2, Monday through Friday.
So is this study something that you wouldn't mind sharing with the board?
Yes, so it's the Pew Charitable Trust. You can look it up online. Pew is a research center that's been around for 70 years. It's global and it's non-governmental. And they studied 6 districts in the United States, even though they do studies all around the world. I only cited the one that they did here in the United States. But if you looked more globally, you would find similar trends. But you can save the money. I'm telling you how. You need to lay off all the staff and then additional staff, and it will work. There was another question over here, Mr. Rhodes.
Mrs. Smith was first.
Oh, okay.
And we need to go through the president of the board
Oh,
to
okay.
get questions asked.
Okay.
Thank you. You mentioned Ms. Dominique, which then actually just made me a little confused. And I was wondering, I understood Ms. Dominique's testimony to be in support of the recommended motion. And
Absolutely.
did you have a different view? That's all. I just
No,
wanted to
I totally
clarify.
saw her, she was absolutely in support of the motion. But even when she was describing, like, you had to move here, you had to move there, you had to move there. And Ms. Matheson even asked in confusion, like, what do you mean you had to do this and this? So it just kind of reinforces that we've done this before. Like, why would we do it again? Like, is there another way that we could possibly come up with to solve this problem, that we're not being redundant in what we're doing, either globally or locally?
I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify, make
Yeah.
sure I wasn't confused.
Nope, that
Ms.
was her.
Dominique did call in support of the motion.
Yeah.
Mr. Rhodes?
Hi, Mrs. Demario. What is your opinion on 6 through 8?
So 6 through 8 is a common thing that they do in the lower 48. My 5th grader thinks he's ready for a 6 through 8 model. What I would be more interested in is in the psychology of it for our particular community. Yeah, so 6 through 8 is a common model that you see all around the lower 48, and it works there. I just think it would be a harder transition for us just because of the way that our model has been, but I don't know that that would be a hard shift. But I'm not an expert on that.
All right, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Stacy Foshi. If you will state your name, spell your last name, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Stacy Foshee, Foshee, and I live in Fairbanks. Joy Elementary, named and dedicated after Louis F. Joy, former school board president and member for over 25 years, was built in 1960 and 1961 and received awards for its unique and beautiful design at the 1962 Seattle World's Fair. In 1989, the school was expanded to include the additional T-shaped wing. This historic circular-shaped building has brought great joy to numerous lives over the years. Almost everyone has a story about joy. So it is heart-wrenching when we consider closing something that houses sweet memories of years gone by. I agree that the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District needs more efficient buildings, which unfortunately means change. I come to you this evening to advocate for your very thoughtful consideration of the ramifications of moving all of the students that the district has proposed, especially the 325 students and 61 staff members of Joy K-8. That move alone will affect the lives of 460 parents and caregivers, many of whom are among our most vulnerable in the community. This fall, 47% of Joy families qualified for free and reduced lunch, one of the highest percentages among the elementary schools. If schools are to close, then let us look at the core values of our strategic plan as a guide to make choices in collaboration with families and caregivers. Let us consider the district's objectives of equity and inclusion, ensuring that there are a variety of ways that families can give feedback and that we listen, truly listen, to understand and not just to reply. We must consider all aspects of closing schools, not just monetary savings, which is a very small part of the overall budget shortfall.
That's time. Thank you so much for your testimony this evening.
Thank you.
Next, we have Olivia Lathrop via Zoom.
She had to go offline.
Oh, offline? Okay. Next, we have Pat Schmidt online.
I don't see her on.
No. Has that been our hour, Ms. Tuttle?
No, you're good for till 8:04.
We do have a little extra time. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to testify this evening? All right, seeing none, public testimony is now concluded. I would like to then go ahead and turn it over to administration. And then we'll go back to the board.
Thank you, President Luke. I've had the opportunity to listen to testimony in a number of different venues, and each time it makes me sad. Sad to know that this is where we are in our district and in our community, and for the family and students involved. You've heard me say on many occasions that we are a learning organization, and we are a learning organization in the 21st century. I've said we manage all these systems, budgets, food service, so that we can offer an excellent education. We've come to the point in the history of this learning organization that we can no longer staff buildings adequately or offer our middle school students the options they need during the crucial transition of moving from an elementary school environment to a high school schedule. We're challenged as a learning organization in the 21st century with the changing reality of what public education looks like. Choice and innovation is a part of the equation and narrative for current school districts across the country. We have an opportunity at this point in history to be visionary as we look to the future of what choice and innovation might be. Using a current facility to grow the programs we currently offer is one step in visioning what the future education for Fairbanks North Star Borough School District might be. The conversation and work of school closures began well before I returned and joined the district. While the budget may have been moving the decision process forward, it is not the sole reason for the move of this nature. This is what is better for students, the students we serve, and the support people that work in the system. The inability to fully staff all our buildings has stretched our current staff and teachers to the edge of reasonability. Small student populations in middle schools is limiting the elective options for some of our middle schoolers and is not offering the quality experience in their preparation for their high school career. In short, we're funding buildings and not students. During this process, we included a community task force. We had almost 3,000 responses to a community survey that were in support of these sorts of changes. The administration has put forth an option that both addresses the educational needs of our students by concentrating our funding on students and providing vision for the future. At this point, I'm going to ask Mr. DeGraw to give a few comments.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. A little bit of history on enrollment in our school district. 20 years ago, back in 2003, our official enrollment was 15,140 students. This year, we currently stand at 12,268, almost 3,000 students down from 20 years ago. That equates out to approximately 5,600 seats being vacant district-wide in our school district. What this equates out to is an inefficient use of our resources. One could use the term wasteful as we continue to fund, as Ms. Moline mentioned, buildings rather than allocating resources to direct student instruction that benefits kids. An additional layer to this is our ongoing challenges in finding enough employees to fill our buildings. As we're spread out and we're attempting to staff too many buildings for too few students, we're having a hard time, as are the rest, as is every organization nationwide, to adequately staff its organizations. We're having the same struggles. School closure is not a new topic. These conversations began many years ago as folks in the community saw the gradual downward trend in our enrollment. And in addition to that, the 15,000 students that we had district-wide 20 years ago, the district was funding significantly lower square footage than we are today. One might think that COVID-19 has brought on this topic. As I mentioned earlier, this topic has been going on for several years now. I would say COVID-19 has exacerbated what was a challenging financial situation before the pandemic, has made that financial situation worse, and therefore made these moves that administration is recommending tonight urgent in nature. I've recently updated our fiscal year 23 deficit from $17.5 million to $19 million. And that equates out to a 2-year deficit that the district is facing of $23 million. The recommended moves by administration equate out to $3 million in annual savings, and those are documented savings. Those are not made up savings. Those are not guesstimates. Those are now documented savings that the district will realize every year. These estimates do not include savings from leases, various leases that the district has around the community. It does not include ongoing routine and major maintenance costs that pop up in every one of our buildings on an annual basis that the district has to bear the cost of. It does not include long-term, short-term capital improvement needs of any of these buildings, which reaches tens of millions of dollars within the next 10 years. Want to point out there's a lot of concern, and I understand it's a very legitimate concern, of the needs of our special ed students in the district. We're talking about the movement of special ed programs, and that's of utmost focus and importance to administration. We're going to be presenting our proposed budget 2 weeks from now on the 14th, 2 weeks from yesterday. I will give, while I can't give details, we'll give one point of preview to that proposed budget. We are not proposing a single reduction in any special ed department or program or position anywhere across the entire budget district-wide. So I want to repeat, while we will see significant reductions because of the financial challenges we're facing, we are proposing a status quo, untouched special ed budget within that overall district-wide budget. I just want to clarify, I've realized when I've talked about the annual operating cost savings, I have had a talking point that I've had several times in public, that if we choose not to close buildings, that's certainly a choice we can make, but that would equate out to $3 million in what will end up being staff reductions that we'll have to make to realize those same savings. I don't want there to be a perception that if we do close buildings, there will be zero staff cuts in our proposed budget. There will be significant staff cuts, aside from, combined with the staffing reductions coming from these closures. If we don't choose to close buildings, it will just make those already significant staff cuts even larger. I understand this is an emotional topic. I've mentioned publicly that I attended Joy Elementary School, K through 2. I appreciate the emotions, the passion, the love of school communities that folks here tonight have, and other folks around the community. I would expect nothing less than for communities and students and staff and parents to advocate for their school buildings. At the same time, I'm a believer that every school in our school district is a great school, and that if there were other schools that were under consideration for closure, that we would see very similar reactions, very similar testimony, because I truly believe that what makes the school environments in our district are the people and the staff, and the folks in the trenches helping kids learn every day. And so I can appreciate this is an emotional topic. However, the financial challenges that we face are just too daunting to continue to ignore the topic of facility utilization. We feel strongly as an administrative team that the actions of closing the schools that are under consideration will help us to build a solid foundation from which we can move forward on. The global pandemic has caused significant upheaval in operations, in school activities on a day-to-day basis at every level. And so from a financial perspective, we feel strongly that this move will provide us a solid base from which to move forward, to look at how we reinvent ourselves in a way. How do we pivot? How do we respond and provide services on an ongoing basis to our community, to students, to staff, to families? And we feel this is extremely important, this move, to help us do that, and to provide the best, improved services is the bottom line, and do better and move forward in the best way we can. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We have Mr. Doran.
Thank you, President Luke, for the opportunity to address my motion. And as I indicated earlier, that out of respect and full understanding of the breadth of this agenda item. This is the first of what I hope will be 3 motions under this item. This one dealing with closures. Then I will address the idea of repurposing, bring forth a plan to repurpose and to support alternative programs, and then also one to bring forth a plan for 6-8. So I think it's important to understand that context. To the motion on the floor right now, it's a very difficult one. It's one that I do know has come over the years. Before I was on the board and since I've been on the board during the budget sessions, it is not unusual for the question to come up, can we and should we close a building? We've certainly been able to move beyond that in previous years. Our current situation is different than anything I've seen in all my years in Fairbanks. There are 3 major factors that bring it to highlight for me. One is indeed, yes, our enrollment has decreased over time. Our population in the borough has decreased over time, so therefore fewer students. More significantly, in the 2020 census that just came out, our child population has decreased even more than our borough population. And they have made the notation that families are childbearing years, families are having fewer children later, and many of those in their childbearing years have moved out of the borough. We have a lot of seats. What has impacted me greatly is visiting schools over particularly the last several years, visiting every school during the school year, and seeing empty classrooms that have increased in number rather than decreased, and realizing that there's kind of a tipping point in the functioning of the schools, having enough students, enough teachers within the schools. So that's one of the things that impacts me right now. These 2 schools represent, if we decide to close them, and yes, it will be a board decision, and we will, hopefully, parents will not be the targets of that, but it's our responsibility. Represents 875 seats. So a significant number of seats, all at the elementary level. The consideration for staff shortages, we have known there's been a staff shortage in education coming since at least the last 20, 25 years. It's a national trend. It has greatly increased in the last 5 years, not only for certified staff, but also support staff. And then certainly right now in our nation, it's not only in education, it's across the board. So that is a consideration. There is the financial consideration. Part of that I will lay on the steps of the state government. They have cut funding to education dramatically in the last several years. What has stayed the same is the BSA, the base student allocation, but with inflation that is decreasing and has not been changed, I believe, for about 6 years. Locally, we have seen a decrease in the local borough contribution, with the exception of last year, where they did give a boost of $400,000, but that represented millions less than we had just a few years ago, approximately 6 million less. So we have been crunched financially, and in putting together this motion and the subsequent ones that I hope to have the opportunity to present, I do really want to say that I think what administration has looked at, have tried to pull together, what board members have looked at, what parents, community members have looked at and said, hey, you've really got to look at this. We have some tough choices. So this is one piece to that. I think it's a step, I might say, in the direction, I was going to say the right direction, in the direction we need to take. It is not the only step, but I think it is significant, but is not hasteful, and that's why I am breaking this out into 3 groups. Each deserves their own deliberation. I think the public really needs to understand both the reasons for their consideration as well as the ramifications for those things. So we are in a financial bind. We need help from the state. We need help from the local contribution from the borough. And we also have to be responsible and realistic as we move forward. So a very, very unfortunate development that we do need to close schools. We even need to consider it, but that we need to take action. And this was started last spring to try and get the information out, begin the process. It's a long one. When it comes right in front of you, it is tough. It is tough. And so those are my comments in terms of making this motion in the way I did. And as I said, it is there'll be subsequent ones relative to this agenda item that tries to be respectful of the input we've gotten from the community, the recommendations we've gotten from the administration, and the conversation over multiple meetings, work sessions, agenda items, whether they're reports or otherwise, by the board over the last year. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
We have a good list of board members who have raised their hand, who are in the queue. First, we have Ms. Marati, then we have Ms. Smith, then we have Colonel Williamson, and I was in the queue, and Ms. Sanderson. We'll start with Ms. Marati.
Thank you. I am in support of some of these motions, and therefore in support of breaking all 3 motions out so that we can vote on them individually. Over the last month, I've visited every single school and program that would be impacted by the vote tonight. And I brought back questions each time to the administration, but many of them could not be answered because no plan is being transparently provided to the board or the community. We keep hearing that they can't make a plan until we make a decision, but a business plan is provided when making an investment decision. We're going to invest in a program. I expect a plan provided with expectations, projections, and more information. Also, and so I'm hoping that the administration can hear us and come back with a better plan with more information so that we can make the decision. In the meantime, it was stated that the borough has an additional $16.5 million that they could provide to the school district through their local contribution. And if they respect and honor public education in our community and our ability to make a decision that is equitable to all of our students, I feel that that is a way that we can advocate for during this really tough budget season. That's all for now.
Mrs. Smith?
I'd like to move to amend the motion. That's okay now.
Go ahead.
I'd like to amend the motion to read, move to close Anderson Elementary School and Joy Elementary School, repurpose Nordale Elementary School for district alternative programs, and shift to a 6-8 middle school configuration.
Second.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would like to speak to my motion that this is the recommended action from the administration. And this weekend, we had a presentation from the Alaska Association of School Boards, during which we were firmly reminded that one of our roles as a board is to seek and receive the counsel of our administration and to trust our administration. And the administration has been researching and reviewing these options for a long period of time. They have reached out to the community in all the ways that Ms. Moline had previously laid out for us. We don't need to rehash. And I just think that this really supports a vision for the future of our education in the Fairbanks North Star Borough.
Colonel Williamson.
Thank you, President Luke. I just wanted to make a few comments about the on-Eielson schools. And, as you look through the facility utilization plan or study, all courses of action include a shutdown of Anderson, which is not a decision that we at Eielson look forward to. But unfortunately, the capacity numbers tell the story out here, with Anderson at approximately 70% capacity, Crawford at 48%, and Ben Eielson at about 55%. And right now, we don't see any significant increase to our on-base population. But let me be clear about that. We still have military members that are coming in for new mission growth to include F-35 and other missions, but it's likely they'll be living in and around the borough because we aren't building any new houses on the installation. So we actually have 500 less houses on the installation than we did in 2004. So that's just a piece of data for the record on that one. We love our school, our Anderson Elementary here at Eielson, and the staff that provides for our families. And we don't want to close, but we understand the capacity and the numbers and the financial situation in the district. I've had an opportunity to speak with all the principals, and one of the concerns that they have is that we need to get to a decision on Anderson tonight so that they can move forward with the hiring, the staffing cycles, and working consolidation plans over the summertime. And in closing, I would just remind everybody that Anderson Elementary has a strong heritage. It's named after Major Rudolph Anderson, who was shot down out of his U-2 in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And if the decision is made by the board to close Anderson, we believe that it would be appropriate to rename Crawford to Anderson Crawford Elementary. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel Williamson. Ms. Sanderson?
Thank you, President Luke. And for transparency's sake, I'd like to read the Diversity Committee concerns about the school efficiency options and the utilization, the facilities utilization from the Diversity Committee. And I won't read all of it, but I have highlighted a few of the bullet points that they took. This is the body of the work. So they said that we, the Diversity Committee, do not support any of the recommendations presented as the school efficiency options or for the following reasons. The decisions did not articulate the impact of the student body, teachers, and support staff. The closure of Joy further exacerbates existing barriers to students' services and students' achievement, which is component of each of the three proposals. There may be consequences for disadvantaged populations who may not have other means to transport their students. The decisions did not articulate an adequate or consistent transportation plan for all of the impacted students. The emphasis on some of the options is not serving minority students or families and does not bring them to any benefit through the homeschooling option. We strongly recommend the members of the Diversity Committee have significant and meaningful involvement and future decisions that impact students and families who are marginalized in our community. So this was submitted from the Diversity Committee and as their voice to be added to this tonight. And I just wanted to make sure that that gets entered into a record. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anderson. It was my turn next, and then we'll go to Mr. Sampson and then Mr. Rhodes and then Mr. Doran. Some of the things that I think of when we talk about even money from the state, every time that we are told that we are being fully funded, that means flat funding, which means with step increases every year for educators, we are starting in a $2 million deficit every single year. And without having a BSA increase for 6 years, that's $12 million that has caused that significant of a deficit just with that flat funding or no increase in state BSA. We were given an incredible gift of financial help through COVID with 3 rounds of COVID money. Currently, that COVID money is being utilized to fund our general fund, which is to fund our educators that are currently in our classrooms to keep the PTR, the student and teacher ratio low and at its current level. We still have that $16.5 million from the borough. We will be asking our legislators for more funding with our district. Our fund balance, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. DeGraw, you were mentioning our fund balance is going to be at a 0?
Our general fund balance is officially 0.
It is officially 0. That's like having $0 in our bank account, in a family bank account. I am a parent of 7 children. Most of mine have IEPs, 504 plans. I have a 5th grader going into 6th grade. I know the fear of change. I understand the fear of change. My husband's an educator. He got involuntarily moved last year because of all of the things, all the shakeups and everything that's going on. I would urge caution to bank on one-time funding. It's moving our issue down the road when we have a $20 million deficit for 2 years. Even if we got the $16.5 million, all of it from the borough, which will also be utilized for all of these other programs, that still leaves $4 million or $3.5 million deficit that we're still looking at. And I know I'm speaking money right now, but the dollars are what pays for our amazing, incredible educators in our district. It is what pays for our incredible programs. It is what paid for my son when he had a one-to-one aide. It's what paid for the custodian that would check on my son every day in class and make sure that she gave him a physical task, that he got that physical feedback for his body. It's what pays for our nutrition services, to be in the class and actually be a part of one of my children's IAPs that check in every day. We have our most incredible resources are educators in those buildings, are the people that are in the classrooms every single day with our students. We entrust these incredible people with our most valuable asset, our children. And I want to keep as many of these adults as possible and educators in these buildings with our students. I believe wholeheartedly that our administrative staff has worked tirelessly to ensure that we have a budget that we can maintain the greatest amount of people in those buildings for our students, the resources for their social emotional needs, ensuring that they have curriculum, ensuring that we will not lose one special education employee, ensuring that we have two assistant superintendents that are checking in with all of the principals and the staff at those locations, our chief school administrator, working on a plan, trying to figure out what we're going to do for the future. No one wants to make these hard choices. Nobody wants to close a school. However, if it is how we keep our educators in those classrooms, those are the trade-offs that we need to do, is ensure that we have people in those classrooms educating our students and the supports in those classrooms to support our students as we move forward. Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. You said it.
Mr. Rhodes.
Well, I agree that school closure is a necessity in this case. I disagree with the updating and putting more resources into best homeschool at this point. I've been homeschooled. I've done private school. I've done the whole lot. And at this point, if we want to invest in a homeschool program later, we can do that. But to be banking on something that in 3 years, when COVID may or may not be a problem, I don't know if that's something that we should bank on. And if we are, there needs to be a solid program, because I have homeschool friends that come to my high school and take classes already. So I think until BEST fully utilizes the programs that are available to them currently, we shouldn't be adding and giving them more resources to compete, because I was homeschooled with IDEA, and frankly, I don't think IDEA has very many more resources than BEST, because, well, I know the resources IDEA had. So I just think that until BEST less or more proves it, they shouldn't have more money or more resources to handle.
Mr. Doran.
Thank you. I want to address the amendment, which is what is before us at this point. And I want to speak against the amendment for several reasons. One, in terms of repurposing a building for district programs, and I guess before I say anything further, I want to go back to the fact that I do trust the administration and the staff, which is one reason why I feel very comfortable when I ask questions, I will get answers. How we interpret that data, that may be a different piece, but I do very much trust. But in the case of repurposing a building, I think, for one thing, that's, I don't think it really passes the red face test and wouldn't pass my red face test. I'll talk about myself. In that, if we are saving money, why wouldn't we just do that? If we have so much room, in a sense, why close a school which would probably grow in size if we close 2 schools, we're going to be adding, especially a neighborhood school, an adjoining neighborhood school to one of the schools that, in my motion, I've said to close. But in terms of the idea of repurposing for district alternative programs, we have not really seen a plan. Yes, it has been said, oh, well, one program, BEST, needs access, it would be good to have access to a gym. It would be good to have a couple of classrooms. We're not talking about a whole school. We're not talking about a whole building. We have space in our buildings currently to give access to a gym, to give access to classrooms. We even have space in those buildings to provide some office space. With the BEST program, we are speculative at best, and I don't want to minimize what BEST does. I've had students as a principal who went to BEST, came back from BEST, where it provides different things. I know students and families throughout our community where that has made a big difference. However, BEST grew in size because of the pandemic. We do know that is fact. That's when it actually almost about tripled in size. And it was because we were remote. Parents who needed to be there with their kids, as long as they were home, they couldn't work. They had resources, they had people. And I've heard parents who said, hey, that was great. I actually had an enjoyment. I didn't expect it with my kids. We have other parents who say, that's what I like to do. I want to work with my kids, and I have the resources and the support. So it provides a very, very important thing. But what we don't know is how many parents would come back to our schools with consistent in-person learning. Last year, we picked up approximately 1,000 students of the 2,000 we lost. People still had a question whether we were going to stay in person. When we started last August, we were in high COVID incidents. People said, I want to make sure that I can provide consistency this year. And there are a variety of other reasons, so I don't want to just stereotype everybody. We also know we lost students to other statewide homeschool programs. We don't know how many of those will still come back to our district if they know they can count on consistent in-school, in-person learning. Some will continue with homeschool, but it is very reasonable that many will come back, and we don't know this. We have not yet seen a plan for growing BEST to be competitive statewide. Just, we're going to do this. We do know we had some discussion last year, I think it was last spring, in our budget discussions that it would take an investment of marketing, significant amount, tens of thousands of dollars. There are investments to make this happen. In the meantime, we're perhaps disrupting a school, and we've heard discussion here, even among ourselves, whether it should be an elementary school, should it be a middle school, should it be a high school. We don't have that. We have not yet had that information. What is really the need that BEST has? How can we support them? They may need relocation. And so that's the piece on that part of the amendment that I have great concerns. The second part of the amendment, which included the shift to 6-8 grade middle school configuration, as was stated even here tonight, it's not a bad deal. Many middle schools are 6-8. We have them in our district. North Pole has been in that. When they did go 6-8, it was because the North Pole was growing. There was not room in the elementary schools, and that was the impetus to move it. But it has worked well, and people over time developed the middle school philosophy to use with that at North Pole Middle. It's not a bad deal, but we haven't seen a plan for how it actually gets implemented and what the ramifications are for it. If we made the shift just to 6-8, then we actually lower the occupancy rates of our elementary schools in the Fairbanks area up to about 12%. I believe when you look at it, and I do know that final numbers would depend on if we close a school and where those students would attend. But the projection of moving sixth graders all to 6-8 lowers the occupancy rates of elementary schools greater than what we already have a concern for. We also have a couple of elementary schools who were given, with the direction of the board, the support of administration, to develop 7-8 additions, so there would be K-8 schools. When I looked at the timeline for those, very interestingly, they had basically just gotten going when COVID hit, and they've struggled through that, through remote learning, through hybrid learning, through trying to get through this period of having kids come back and meeting their needs. When I look at the idea of, I guess we're getting some feedback. Sure. When I look and consider that LAD and Arctic Light have really worked on that, are they being dropped out of the 6-8? I was told yes. Why? Could we keep them, especially if our middle schools went to 95, 96%? And we don't want to get to over 100%. We've been there. We've done that. Which is one reason we built Randy Smith, which is also designed to be increased in size if we ever needed it. We have not needed that. But both Ryan and Tanana were well over 100% capacity. So I am very concerned that we are, the amendment brings forth 2 items that we have not seen a plan on, and that we are mixing the visual, and I'll end with this, the visual that comes to mind, the way the amendment suggests, is it's like packing up your house for a move. And you take a box and you put some kitchen stuff in there, you put some living room stuff in there, some bedroom stuff in there. These are 3 very separate items that we have not had, I think we owe our community separate consideration, separate conversation, and so that they really know what it is that we're putting forth, why it might be good, what the ramifications are, and really be able to make an informed decision. So I am not in favor of this amendment for those reasons. I did specifically present to the board and hope to be able to move forward out of trust, in terms of that trust with the administration, that we do get a plan to address the district's alternative programs and their needs, and we do get a plan that is detailed enough so people really know what the implementation of a district-wide 6-8 middle school configuration looks like. So I'll pause there and would like to be back in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. We have Mrs. Smith, then Ms. Sanderson, Mr. Sampson, Mr. Rhodes, and then I put myself back in, and then Ms. Marati.
Thank you. I'm not sure who can best address this question, but I have just repeatedly heard the term neighborhood school used just over and over and over. And I thought all of our schools were in neighborhoods. Is there some like legal or education system definition of what a neighborhood school is?
I think it's a term that describes a school in a community, like a neighborhood school. It doesn't have a legal definition or a district definition. It just describes a school that is attended by the surrounding population and those that are designated in that in that boundary group. So we draw boundaries around our schools, and so those boundaries define the neighborhood of that school.
And so every school is a neighborhood school.
Every brick and mortar school is a neighborhood school, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, and then I did have one other question.
Go ahead.
I just, I think this question is probably for Mr. DeGraw. On the repurposing of the building, there has been a lot of talk about using it for homeschool, as if an entire school was going to be used for homeschool. And through this process, I feel that the administration has made it very clear that that is not the intention of the administration. And I was wondering if you could tell me the number of students enrolled in the e-learning program currently? Just like a general, like 100 or 200 or 5.
Yeah, so there's approximately 200 full-time e-learning students in the district, and then many other courses are taken kind of one-offs at the secondary level.
Right. And so then there are several hundred, whether that's 318, which were before the pandemic, or it's 700 that we have now, doesn't matter. Several hundred students from
Best.
Correct.
Approximately 740 currently.
Okay, so 700, but even if it was just pre-pandemic numbers, it's over 300. And then there would also be the special education program, possibly multiple special education programs, allowing those programs to spread out and have use of that facility also. So if we had pre-pandemic best, we would have 300 students. If we have e-learning, and maybe it's only half because of the pandemic, we have 100 students. Then we have our most vulnerable students, special education students, even if it's not tons of them because the alternative programs are small, maybe another 50 students. We are still talking about a building serving 600 or 700 students to some degree. So I just wanted to make it really clear that this isn't going to be an abandoned building that is brand new and beautiful and thrown out there for the use of an elite handful of students. We are talking about using this resource to support 700 students at the minimum. And if we maintained the numbers that we have now, or anywhere near them, it's approaching 1,000 students who are our responsibility, our board's responsibility. 1,000 students would have use of this facility. It would give their educators more space, their administrators more space, and the students themselves more access to their administrators and their educators. And it would be providing just a better resource for nearing 1,000 students in our district. And I just wanted to make sure that that was very clear today.
Thank you. Ms. Sanderson?
Yes, actually, I was just going to piggyback on it because that's the missing information for me is our e-learning academy, how we've grown that and how that's been utilized throughout the entire pandemic time. And also the talk about bridge, how does that, I know that we're in a lease, but what is the movement on that? Are we able to break the lease? That's the big expenditure when you're looking at all of this, is the monies and the lease payments that we're making to house that program in an out of district building. So those are some concerns and questions or more information that I needed to have presented. Thank you.
Ms. Moline, you had your hand up. I apologize. And then Mr. DeGraw.
Well, I just wanted to expand on some of the comments of Mr. Doran and Ms. Smith. To Ms. Smith's comments about the repurpose of a building, it's a visionary step into the future. And I don't want us to just think of it as a narrow thing, like we can only put BEST in there and we can only put e-learning in there, we can only put SMART in there, we can only put the programs that we have available now. We're launching into a whole new world, and the pandemic has been the catalyst for that launching. But having the repurposing mindset that, like Ms. Smith, that we can reach students in ways that we haven't been able to reach students. We can provide choices in ways that we haven't been able to provide choices in the past. This in our thinking, it's not just things that we can see now, but setting ourselves up for what might be possible in the future. There's endless numbers of possibilities out there for innovation, for supporting choices that we haven't even discovered yet. So while the conversation has focused a lot around BEST, I would say that from our point of view, this is a forward visionary kind of a move that opens up doors to all kinds of things that we may not even know yet. So that's the point for the repurposing. And then to speak to the 6-8 model, I think we've said in a number of different settings that our 6-8 models would be developed by the schools themselves as they created their school community, worked through it with principals. We have engaged a group. I don't know the acronym right now. AMLE, which is a nationwide group of middle school leaders to help facilitate our middle schools through creating the model that's going to make the most sense and serve their population and their students in the most effective way. So each school community will create their school model that works best for them with the facilitation of a nationwide organization that works with middle schools all across the country. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Mr. DeGraw.
And just to respond to Ms. Sanderson's question about the lease for the bridge program, I know Mr. Doran's asked about this. I am in the process of connecting with our attorneys. They do have some information. I just haven't had a chance to visit with them. I would just submit to the board that whether, worst case scenario, we're looking at 2-year timeline that we have to remain in the existing facility. Best case scenario, we potentially look at an early exit, but I would just submit to the board that doesn't, whether it's 2 years, 1 year, whatever, that should not have an impact on whether or not it's fundamentally the right decision to repurpose a building. And none of those savings are being incorporated into current figures.
Thank you. Ms. Sanderson, did you? Okay, thank you. We have Mr. Sampson, Mr. Rhodes, Ms. Marotti, and then I had myself in the queue.
Thank you, Madam President. As was stated previously, no one wants to close a school. No one looks forward to closing a school. No one wakes up and says, boy, I can't wait till these Cubs and Tigers, these kids come in and these families come in and pitch why their school is so important to them. Unfortunately, years of irresponsible fiscal practices, that's when you spend more than you have coming in. That's called irresponsible fiscal practice. Years of that.
Point of order, I'm sorry, that's a reflection on the board.
It is a
as a
reflection
whole.
on the board, and it's a fact of the
I don't
matter.
think, and I think it's
for years.
against our norms.
Mr. Sampson.
Like I said,
Move, yeah.
when it comes to spending, we can spend 180 million like that. 220 million, we can spend it. When it comes to saving $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, it's a tough deal. It's a real tough deal to get 4 people to come together and say, you know what? I care about these kids so much that I'm going to try and keep as many teachers as we can. And that is basically where we have landed. The can's been kicked down the road. Are we allowed to say that? I'll take that back. We found ourselves here, as you've heard, our fund balance, our piggy bank is zero. It's zero. As you heard me state last week, I'm not happy about the Nordale choice. Okay, I would have rather, pulled the trigger on some other schools, and we could have maybe repurposed one of those other schools. And I would have rather seen Nordale be the last school that we decide to close. But the fact of the matter is we need to do more than 2. And I don't see that happening next year. I don't see the desire to do 3, except in this scenario. Is it the ideal scenario? No, not at all. I am 100% in favor of 3 schools so that we can have the teachers, as many teachers as possible. But this is pretty much what we're stuck with. Unless we want to save Nordale and send $1.3 million worth of teachers down the road. My hands are pretty much tied. I've got a fiducial responsibility to this district. And when our piggy bank is zero, we have to do something. This is where we're at. And that's why I'm in support of this. It's an emotional topic that deals with habits and sentiment and dollar bills. Habits and sentiment doesn't pay our salaries. It doesn't pay the medical. Doesn't keep the lights on. That's cash. And we're bleeding cash. And for once, we're going to turn the ship around, not because we want to, but because we have to. That's where we're at. We don't have any other choice. $16 million worth of CARES funding, over $8 million. CARES 2, another $8 million, CARES 3. It's like over 100 teachers, it's a bunch of people. It's temporary money. You think this conversation's hard? Next year's coming. We're going to have another conversation. 6, 7, 8. We want 6th graders with 8th graders. I'm not a real big fan of that, but you know what that does? It decreases the number of students that are in our elementary schools, which gives us another opportunity, as disgusting as that sounds, an opportunity to close another school next year or 2 schools. And what that does is it saves money, the bottom line, and it allows us to retain the educators and the support staff with those funds. That's why I'm in support of this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Rhodes?
So this is a question for Mr. DeGraw, and excuse me if it's been answered previously. With the repurposing of the school, my parents are big into real estate, and I know a few words, and I'm minor in it, but does it pencil? Do the expenditures on that building meet the returns? Does it, do you understand the question?
So as far as the costs of repurposing a building, it was somewhere in the $250,000 range a year. You're looking at utilities and some custodial support for the building, and then some minor, maintenance and supplies. Specifically to Nordale, it is one of our newer buildings, if not the newest. Well, not the newest, but a newer building. So relatively low maintenance costs on that end. And so when you're looking at do the costs justify the action taken, you're looking at what you'd call a break-even point. And so if we're looking at, we haven't been shy in talking about expanding the the offerings and expanding our plans to market to the homeschool community to expand the BEST program. And so based on profitability numbers, expenses, revenues, et cetera, my calculations show a break-even point of about 80 to 90 students, additional students would break even on those costs that I just outlined. Did that answer your question, Mr. Rose?
Yeah.
Ms. Marotti?
Thank you. So instead of talking about students like Kyler and EJ and Camille, who testified so bravely tonight, we've talked at length about the numbers and being good stewards of district finances. However, when I asked Mrs. Moline to provide revenue projections, she stated there's no metric that can be used to know the revenue, what revenue might be generated. That tells me that this is a risk at this time, and taking risks during a deficit situation is not being a good steward of district finances. It was also stated that they want to repurpose Nordale based on recent increased enrollment at BEST, but this has been because of a pandemic, and therefore not a stable nor long-term source for a projection. Lastly, the board is not privy at this time to the schools that the administration will propose should the board vote to not repurpose Nordale for homeschool, and therefore we don't know the opportunity costs for our decision tonight. Therefore, I'm not in favor of Ms. Smith's amendment because the original motion gives the administration time to provide a plan and more information to the board. I do have a question. When asked what is a neighborhood school and if we have any non-neighborhood schools, Mrs. Moline stated that all schools in our district are a neighborhood school. However, and I apologize, Ms. LaPlante, I'm gonna have to put you on the spot. You shook your head no. So could you clarify?
Our charter schools and magnet schools wouldn't be what we would consider a neighborhood school. Those are schools of choice. And while there are certainly some students who live near them and probably have the opportunity to walk to them, those are considered schools of choice and wouldn't probably be what we typically consider our neighborhood schools, although they are technically in neighborhoods, of course.
Thank you.
Ms. LaPlante, I wanted to go back to you because it's my turn. We had asked you a question earlier during testimony, Ms. Matheson, and so I just wanted to go back to that question. Do you recall what that question was?
Yeah, you asked about how would our special education students being supported if we're transitioning to them to additional schools. And I'm going to also ask if it's acceptable to include Derek Coriel in the answering of this question because he has a lot of experience in helping special education students transfer, both in individual transfers where they're going to another school to meet their own educational needs, or when we are moving programs, which we have done before. So before I invite Mr. Coriel to participate in the answer, I'll just say that we are very aware of the fact that we have lots of students at our schools who have experienced transitions before, sometimes not always gracefully or easily, and that they may need additional support for that. And we're working together with the schools and the teachers and the counselors to think about some of the best ways to do that. And one of the first things we can do is support the teachers, because I think there's a lot of anxiety when the adults don't know how they're going to respond to the students. So that's where we're starting first.
Before we turn time over, can I get a motion to extend, please?
Move to extend to 9:30.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just want to go through a couple of points, and again, thanks for your time. If schools are closed, then of course that logically we know that we're going to have to move schools and programs. And from a facilities standpoint, this is something that we've done before and we'll have to do in the future, whether schools close or not. So there is a process in place to find the best place to move programs. What that doesn't speak to is the impact on students, and that's the most important part of everything that we're doing if we have to move programs. So what we would do is, again, with the student focus in mind, is first of all, look at the best place that we can geographically and for the best facilities move programs. Secondly, just to point out that, as Mr. DeGraw pointed out, staffing is hopefully going to remain static. So what that means is between the 3 schools that are potentially on the docket for closing, the 211 special ed students there, would the ratio of special ed staff to the number of students would remain static. So we're not going to have less staff working with students. So that ratio will not change. What we would like to do then is we do this for transitions from 6th to 7th or from 8th to 9th, is have transition meetings between families and the receiving school so they can directly discuss the needs of their particular, of their individual child. What we'd also like to do is once we have boundaries that are set, so that would mean our students who are not in district-wide programs would be going to a new neighborhood school, and our neighborhood schools can meet the needs of the majority of our students. So once we have those boundaries set, we would like to help facilitate individual visits for students to go visit their schools and see what their new school is about, and hopefully be welcomed as a part of a new school. Another things that we've talked about is we have an opportunity during the summer. We started some of this last summer. We'll continue is work on SEL over the summer. If it's we have the resources, if there's something that needs to be done specifically for or in addition to what we're doing to meet the needs of students who may potentially be moving, then we will put those resources towards that in the summer as well to help facilitate the least impactful move. And again, just stressing the least impactful, because pretending that there's no impact is not fair to the people involved. Another thing that we've talked about doing is with staff, to help staff prepare for moves, is we've had instances where we're able to offer like a Saturday, an IEP day for our staff, so that staff can either meet with the receiving staff if it's a new teacher, look at paperwork for the new students so they are adequately prepared for any students that will be coming into their programs.
Thank you so much. Mr. Doran?
Thank you. Several points I'd like to make. One, when we talk of, well, our conversation last week made it very clear during our work session that Nordell came to the forefront for repurposing. That was the reason for it to come to the forefront, and was stated by staff last Thursday during our work session. With that in mind, 1,000 students, yes, that's on paper. What my real concern is that 1,000 students are students who predominantly don't want to come to a building. They're doing e-learning. They're doing, and I do want to make a distinction in e-learning, what we've been doing in the high schools, where a number of students are doing e-learning. They have a support teacher with them. They're taking courses from all around the country. Excellent program. We opened up e-learning for elementary, primarily in line with the pandemic. And that, yes, there was some visionary piece with it. And the people who put that together right off the bat were phenomenal. But I do have a real problem with the looking at visionary, and I love visions. It's why I'm in education and spent my career there. However, especially at a time when we don't have the finances and we are cutting back on everything, we can't base something on that visionary without some idea of plan. And again, my concern is we're not seeing a plan. I fully support that we need to be visionary. We need to look ahead. Expanding is problematic to me at this point. It was mentioned, the idea of maybe some other SPED programs could go into a repurposed building. And I just want to keep mindful, and I think very much supportive of what Mr. Coriel was saying. We don't want a concentration of SPED programs in a building. The real advantage of our district-wide SPED programs in schools is that they can do integration, mainstreaming, and those students are part of the regular school population. I believe it's against the law to do a concentration, except in very limited circumstances. And we actually used to have a school that was SPED concentration that was closed and disbanded so that students would be in the mainstream. When we talk about neighborhood, I am mindful of looking at the boundaries that we do have that have been referenced several times. We do have students who are being bused past close by schools. That's actually one of the considerations in terms of Joy. We have other schools that we have moved boundaries around, and we actually bus students past existing schools. So neighborhood is an important thing. I love the connotation of it, but the realities are that we do have some things that can be addressed separately from all of this, just in terms of boundaries. And I do want to take the moment to say, because the term has been misused in the newspaper and has been stated in board meetings, work session, the term gerrymandering to the neighborhoods, that is it does not apply. It has a whole different connotation for one. And being here during times of boundary changes, that was not, I can safely say, certainly that was never a predominant factor in it. It did have a lot to do with spaces and availability when we've changed things. I think also that Mr. Sampson's comment was right on in terms of saying if we do the 6-8 configuration shift without full knowledge of the ramification, he is right. It is the elementary schools. There's another elementary school, if not more, who are in the bullseye. That needs to be understood. Each of these components has a ramification, and I think we need to have those out in the public. That being said, I move an amendment to the amendment.
Currently, Mr. Doran, I believe we're only able to do
We can
the
do two
one.
amendments.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'd like to amend the amendment, striking the words repurpose Nordell Elementary School for, and inserting the words, and for Ms. Tuttle's benefit, if you look at the wording that I presented before the meeting, it'll help with it. So inserting the words, direct the administration to bring forth a plan to address the needs of the district's alternative programs, and also strike or insert after the word and, between and shift. Ms. Tuttle, I just want to pause to make sure to insert the words to present a detailed plan for implementation of and then it would be shift to a 6-8.
Second.
Before I speak to that, let me make sure she's got the wording.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you please read the whole motion, please?
Okay. So it would be moved to close Anderson Elementary School and Joy Elementary School effective with the 2022-2023 school year. Direct the administration to bring forth a plan to address the needs of the district's alternative programs and present a detailed plan for implementation of a shift to a 6-8 grade middle school configuration. Can I speak to the motion then?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I would actually love not to have 2 and 3 at this point, and certainly number 2. But I really want to be respectful and cognizant of the conversations board members have had, administrations have had, in putting forethought into this and to look at various implications. And over the years, we've had various discussions about the district's alternative programs and how we can best do them. And I think we really need to honor that, and we really need to look at that, and this is a good time. We're going to have tough budget conversations in the next couple of weeks, couple of months. But at the same time, within that, and with the visionary look, what are we really doing with alternative programs? What do they need? And where do we go not only this year, but future years? So if they need an investment, we can make an argument in our community and to our state. We need an investment in public education that allows us to do these things. Right now, there's a lot of questions in terms of repurposing for what? We don't know yet. We have not been given anything concrete, and it may be a little bit of a chicken and the egg, but if we're going to make a decision that impacts so many lives, we need more information than to do that, and not just lots of questions. The shift to a 6-8 grade thing, well, each school is going to do it. Absolutely, every school puts their unique spin on it, and that's part of the deal. But what's our umbrella? We have listed benefits to 6-8. You know, I can't argue with that, against that. That's good. I mean, it is things. And I was, unfortunately, I was able to do an internship in this district when this district started middle schools and really invested in them. Some of that may be a little bit about date. I was talking to Mr. Meinert and Ms. McQuan, and yes, that was 40 years ago when I did that, and it was over at Ryan. But the concepts and what I hear and when I visit our middle schools, they are tremendous in what they're doing. And could they do more? I believe so, but let's have some of those plans. So let's get some of that vision before us to say, what are we really deciding upon? And so that's why I say, and I support, the amendment that I made, is let's not forget that this is too important to the board to discuss. And I hear good conversation as why we need to look at it. But let's take our time with it. Let's do it in a thoughtful manner. And yes, we cannot just let it go. And I'm not advocating just letting it go and put it way down the line. We need to do this sooner, but we need, rather than later, but we do need to have the better information, a better plan for the implementation of these and what their ramifications are. And as to the first part of leaving the motion, that we need to take some steps. So I'm very supportive of that first part of the motion, the amendment, is very problematic to me. And so I will leave it there. I am putting forth the amendment to the amendment, and that we can have discussion on the amendment to the amendment.
Mr. Rhodes?
So it's a pig in a poke. And for those who don't know what that reference is, around the 1500s, farmers would put pigs in sacks and sell them without other farmers being able to see them for various reasons, one of which, you don't know if you're getting a good pig or a bad pig, but all the bad pigs get sold, right? So that's why they did it. And that's what this is. The decisions made in past have allowed for it to become to this. There's no good solution. There's not going to be a perfect solution. And a decision needs to be made. A decision needs to be made. Why? Because 6 months from now, there's going to be the next school year, right? And what's happening in the next school year? All these changes. So while I agree there needs to be some more clarification on certain aspects, there are two aspects which I wholeheartedly agree with. One, which is 6 through 8. If we need an example, look at North Pole. Ask Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is one of the greatest principals in the district. You cannot change my mind on that. He is great. You look what they do, C4C, Champions for Charity. It is amazing, frankly. That is what K through 8 is. And so that's what you should look at North Pole if you need an example for it. That's what every 6th through 8th, should be. And if it takes numbers from the elementary school, which is going to do, obviously, we're in a $17 million, $19 million deficit now. So, maybe another elementary school does need to get cut. And that sucks to say. It sucks to say, but sorry, I shouldn't use sucks. It's not a great thing to have to say. But it has to be said, right? I think Mr. Sampson stated it. He made it very obvious that would be the next step. And so I think I came into this a little undecided, if you couldn't tell. I've been going back and forth, but I see where the administration is, what the administration is saying, and sometimes you got to be speculative. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. That's why market crashes happen. And so maybe the board needs to look at this and go, we need to roll the dice, because clearly the past 10 years isn't working, right? There needs to be a change. There needs to be a drastic change. No one likes to say it, but that's what needs to happen.
Mrs. Smith, and then Mr. Sampson.
Thank you. I do not support the amendment. I feel like the administration has answered over and over every question the board has had that did not force them to say the kids on this street will go to that school. And that seems like, we're not going to be satisfied until they draw us lines and hand them out, which would only cause more distress to the public. To say a possible example and put it out there and have your family settled that now we're going to go to Hunter, and when it was only a possible, I don't see why we would repeatedly put out possibles. We need to just put out the reality after the plan is made. And I would just, I assume the goodwill of this board, but I just want to remind the board that we are here to set the policy and direction that we want our district to go in. And I feel like we are just starting to really get into the weeds and micromanage, and we want to have ownership of every little decision, whether it's what streets are going to be the cutoff for the attendance area, or what style of learning the middle schoolers are going to use in their building, whether it's teams or not teams. I just would hope that that's not our intention, to micromanage our staff. And I don't support the motion.
Mr. Sampson?
With all due respect, I'd like to call the question.
Mrs. Tuttle, can you please go ahead and just read the amendment to the amendment that we will be voting on, and just remind everyone what a yes vote means and what a no vote means, please.
Move to amend the amendment to read, move to close Anderson Elementary School and Joy Elementary School effective with the 2022-2023 school year, and move to direct the administration to bring forth a plan to address the needs of the district's alternative programs and to present a detailed plan of implementation to a shift to a 6-to-8 model.
So a yes vote would be to make this the official action item.
No.
Mrs. Tuttle?
It would move to amend the main motion, and it's moving to amend the amendment to read this. So this would then be, you'd vote on this would be voting on this amendment to the amendment, and then if it passed, you'd go on to vote on the main motion as amended, or you would vote on, if it fails, then you would go to vote on the amendment that Mrs. Smith had.
So a yes vote would be that this would turn into the main motion. And then a no vote would be going back to Mrs. Smith's motion. Leah Felipe?
Yes, if I might offer some parliamentary guidance here, yes. The question before us now is whether to amend the amendment. So a yes vote would mean that the question before the body would be whether to amend the original motion. But rather than amending it in the way that Mrs. Smith had proposed, you would be amending it in the way that Mr. Dorn has further proposed. And a no vote would mean that the question before the body would be the amendment as whether would be the potential amendment as proposed by Mrs. Smith. So the question is, a vote neither way will be a substantive vote on the decision of the board. It's a question of packaging.
Correct. Perfect, thank you. All right, Ms. Tuttle, we're ready for the vote.
Can you clarify? Can you clarify that one more time, what you said?
Will you go ahead and repeat yourself, please?
Yes, so the original motion was a motion to close Anderson and Joy. So that was the main motion. Then there was a motion to amend that so that proposing that the action that the board would take would be to close Anderson and Joy and also to repurpose Nordale and to shift to the 6-8 middle school configuration. And Mr. Dorn then made a subsequent motion to amend that amendment. And his proposal is if the board votes yes momentarily here, what you would be voting yes on would be changing the original motion to, instead of saying that you'll repurpose Nordale Elementary and shift to a 6-8 model, that you would be directing the administration to bring forth plans on those, on addressing alternative programs needs and to bring forth a plan for the 6-8 configuration. So the question that's about to be presented for you is whether or not you want to modify Ms. Smith's amendment in that way to make it have the language proposed by Mr. Dorn.
Thank you.
Ms. Tuttle?
Mr. Rhodes?
No.
Thank you. Colonel Williamson?
Yes.
Thank you. Colonel Surrey?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Sampson?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Luke?
No.
Thank you. Amendment to the amendment failed.
We are back to Mrs. Smith's amendment. Can you please read that amendment, Mrs. Tuttle, so we know what it is that we are speaking to?
Move to close Anderson Elementary School and Joy Elementary School, repurpose Nordale Elementary School for district alternative programs, and shift to a 6-8 grade middle school configuration.
I
Chair,
realize
if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
What is technically before the board now at this point is that motion to amend. So if you take a vote now, you won't be voting on whether to do those things. You'll be voting on whether to change Mr. Dorn's original motion, which was to close Anderson and Joy, to also include a directive to repurpose Nordale and shift to a 6-8 middle school model. The question is whether to change his original motion.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion to extend?
Move to extend to 9:45.
Can I get a second?
Objection.
What was that?
Second.
Oh, I thought you said objection.
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did say objection.
Did object to a 15-minute. I think in reality, we need more time, even if we don't use it.
Move to extend to 10 p.m.
Second.
Okay, we are extended till 10 p.m. Mr. Doran?
Okay, to the amendment, not you've heard a lot of my reasoning on it, but just it really strikes me as this is mixing oranges and apples or anything else we want to put together inappropriately because they're such, and not that the thinking is inappropriate, but it's just that the importance of separating these out. They are very important. We've had primary community input regarding closures. We've had some slightly lesser on repurposing for what purpose, and then the third one we've had very little. So I will be voting no on this amendment because I do think that we owe it to our community to have clear understanding of what's at stake.
Mrs. Tuttle?
Ready? Colonel Williamson?
No.
Thank you. Colonel Surrey?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Luke?
Yes.
Thank you. Amendment carried.
Mrs. Smith, would you like to speak to the amendment that passed?
Thank you. I have said enough on this topic. I will allow other people time.
Mr. Doran?
I'm just going to state my perspective that I am supportive, although, as many people have said, none of us likes to see it happen, the closing of 2 schools. I am not supportive of the repurpose, and I would like to get more information regarding the 6-8, more concrete information. But because of the way the main motion has been amended, I will be voting no.
Mr. Rhodes, then Ms. Matheson.
I think the sentiment has been until a decision is made, more information will be, if not difficult, but not as readily available. So I think that on some epic level, we all know where we stand on this, and whether or not it's tasteful or, amazing is not the question. It's what needs to be done. That is what the question is. And sometimes you have to look to the future, even as you're closing, present doors.
Ms. Matheson?
I think that Mr. Rhodes clearly stated that. We've been discussing this for months now.
Years.
Well, I've only been discussing it for months. And we were given all of this information. I don't think that we've lied to the community. I don't think that our admins have lied to us. So, yeah, I'm in favor of this amended motion.
Mrs. Tuttle, can you just read the motion and just explain what a yes vote is and a no vote, please?
The motion as amended is move to close Anderson Elementary School and Joy Elementary School, repurpose Nordell Elementary School for district alternative programs, and shift to a 6-8 grade middle school configuration. A yes vote would adopt this, a no vote would have it fail.
Thank you. Can we get the vote, please?
Colonel Surrey?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
Yes.
Thank you. Colonel Williamson?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Luke?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion as amended carried.
Thank you. We are at board and superintendent comments. Goals and objective: ensure students, staff, families, and the community are informed, connected, and engaged. Are there any comments at the end? Mr. Doran.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on my personal disappointment in how we have approached some of the events this month. The COVID mitigation pieces, we talk about layering. We have not really done that. And I just want to say, in terms of with those families who have been highly impacted, that they know we're thinking about them. And I wish we were doing different or in a position to address everything. At the same time, I really want to say I appreciate the board, because I know we all have given thought to our decisions, and whichever way it works, we we all own that decision. So it's just situations for families that by our decisions that some will agree with, some will not, some will be impacted by, some will not, but that we, I just want to let people know that I feel with you on all sides, and it's important that I listen to all sides to it. So I just want to make those comments. Thank you.
Mr. Sampson?
No comment.
Mrs. Smith?
Nothing further, thank you.
Ms. Marotti?
I want to echo what Mr. Doran said and provide my deepest sympathies to the many students that are going to be impacted by this decision. It's unfortunate that it's our most vulnerable students and that we couldn't come up with a better solution. That's all.
Ms. Matheson?
I would like to thank the administration for giving us all of the information that we needed on this and supporting us, and know that we will support you as well.
Mr. Rhodes?
No comment.
Colonel Surrey? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Sanderson?
Thank you, President Luke. So tonight, first of all, I'd like to just speak to the families that will be impacted by this decision. None of this is easy, and I commend the parents for their support of their students' academic success. I'm very proud of the young people that testified before us today, because it shows that these students really are passionate about their education. As young as they were, they all spoke up with such dignity and respect and pride for their school and for the young Madam President of the school, of her school. What a phenomenal testimony. These decisions are not easy, but the one thing that I think I take comfort in, I have 35 years of experience in this district. I've seen lots of changes, and my passion has been, my more in-depth work has been through the special education program with emotionally impaired students, and all the changes, the renaming, reconfiguring that the district has done over my 35 years. And I think the one thing that I take great joy, comfort, and respect in is that we have employed some of the most outstanding certified staff and support staff. I commend the administration and the executive staff for the training and how Mr. Carriel is continuing to put forth training methods, and he's excelling and bringing up the support staff in such a place that whatever maneuvers and pivots that we might be making in this future of uncertainty, our people are becoming more qualified, more confident, and they're continuing to give their best under the most trying circumstances of things, that as we transition to provide a equitable and excellent education, our students are achieving in tons of ways. And these young men and young students who expressed very clearly the impact that their school, the support their school has showed them, the growth, the maturity, that the confidence in their staff and the people who surround their academic learning. I don't expect that to change. I simply expect it'll bring us up to a new level to meet the commitment that is before us, that we've all sworn duty to uphold. I commend our colonels for speaking up and giving us their input as they manage their own sphere of influence, as we make our community the strongest, more forthright, that is innovative in bringing forth the changes that are coming for our staff and our students. It is with a collaborative effort that we all have to depend upon each other, respect each other, and work closely with each other, and value the passion and the ideas that you have all shared. It's my responsibility as a board member to continue to support and to work feverishly and tirelessly to support this community and our students and administration, our board, as we move forward to pivot in the times that we live in. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for being respectful. And I want to thank you for the wonderful students that came before us tonight. I really appreciate, and it has really is impacted and burnt in my memory. Thank you very much.
Colonel Surrey?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I understand how tough this decision is, and I commend the board for making it. I look forward to working with the board to understanding how the second order effect is going to play out. In other words, how all our students are going to maneuver into the other schools. So Arctic Light, K through 8, where the 6th and 8th grade is going to go. And then some of our students, for example, that are on our base that are K through 5 that currently go to Hunter Elementary, for example, to make sure that we use common sense, and then they would be absorbed into Arctic Light, things of that nature. And that should be the same across the entire district. So we make good, smart decisions, getting into the eaches of students and where they're at and where they're now going to maneuver to, because that's a lot of moving parts across those elementary schools and those middle schools. So again, I look forward to working with you all and understand how tough this decision is and commend you for it. Thanks.
Thank you. Colonel Williamson?
Nothing further tonight. Thanks.
Mrs. Moline?
I have nothing, thank you.
I just want to say it's not easy to lead when times are hard. These are the times that we have to make really hard decisions. They're not decisions that we always want to make, but they're the decisions that they're the decisions that have to be made at this point in time. And that is the spot that we as a board are in at this point in time, to ensure that we have the ability to continue on with the education of our students here in our community. I trust and know that this leadership team, the executive team, they are going to create and finish getting all of the information needed out to ensure that we are going to be successful in the coming years. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
Second.